Hello, everyone. We are here to discuss the aftermath of what I call very bold decision, though I think some of y'all have some other words in mind for it.
Oh, definitely. All right, let's start with some reviews.
Let's see. We're starting off with Ed Marshall.
All right, I see you did a Lazarus Pit plot, so we will have a Robin slash Jason Red Hood character.
I know I'm about to disappoint some of you, but the only thing I know about the Lazarus Pit is from the Arrow show. So I know it's like it can be used to bring dead people back to life, but it usually drives them insane. So you might be onto something with that. But I don't know enough about the Red Hood to definitively make a response to that. So I'm sorry.
Well, thank you, Ed Marshall.
Thank you. Oh boy, Silver 4700 had a lot to say. I think I'm going to take this one.
All right, go for it.
All right. Silver 4700 has a lot to say. And he's been spending the past couple of days trying to put this review in as best as I can. I don't like that Kurai was brought back. Shocker. At all. Personal feelings and jokes about how much I wanted him to die aside, to me it just does not work in my opinion. Let me start with the smallest reason, subverting expectations. It genuinely feels you wrote this with a large intent for shock value. Maybe not entirely the reason, but that's what it feels like. It was more of a fringe benefit than a driving force behind the decision. Like I knew that I knew the shock value was going to be a thing. I won't deny that, but it wasn't the sole purpose of me creating this plot element. Let's see. There could 100% be a way to subvert expectations and making the audience think that Kurai is going to die without either having him stay dead. He believes he's going to die in the little blurb at the story's beginning, but he doesn't factually know he's going to die. You could subvert the reader's expectations by having him record that, then be on the brink of death but not actually die. Portray him as an unreliable narrator, so to speak. You know, I actually did think about that for a time, but that just felt like, that just felt like kind of like this, like what you guys would expect me to do. And I'm not in the business of doing what you all expect me to do. Like I write this from, I don't say this to sound snappy. Like I know what I want the story to do, and I know how to get it there. And I want to do it my way. That's the point of fan fictions, I think. Is you want to see a story play out a different way, do it your way. And that's the fun of it for me. But yeah, I can understand that you I can understand a gripe with expectation subversions in some regards, how do I put this? Like The Last Jedi seemed like a fair amount of it was like Rian Johnson just, ooh, look at me, I can do this stuff with the Force because I'm in charge now. And it kind of didn't make sense. And I'm sure there's a couple of audience members sitting out there that are basically going like, wait a minute, now you're the Rian Johnson of My Hero Academia. You're just doing stuff just to do stuff. No, I'm not. I have not at any point in the story done something just because I could. I have done everything that I have in order to drive the plot forward. Sometimes it's in a more roundabout fashion than others, but everything that I've done to further what I believe to be a good story. Sorry, I went off on a tangent there. Let's see. It may not be worse than somehow Palpatine returns, but even though Palpatine wasn't given an in-movie explanation, it has the exact same effect that this did. I mentioned this example over our message, but I wanted to put it there for as well for the sake of thoroughness. Well, you know what? I guess if nothing else, it's not the worst thing ever. Because you did say it's not as bad as somehow Palpatine returned, so I didn't hit rock bottom with this. That's my takeaway from that. Let's see. There was a lot of emotional drawbacks to Palpatine dying. Anakin's sacrifice and going back to the light side. Luke and his father reconciling, the Force being back in balance from that specific threat. Even Luke's final sacrifice of the Last Jedi can be traced back to the emotional aftermath of Palpatine's death for everyone else. And it caused everyone to look at what happened in the past, either in hindsight or even with rewatches, with a more negative perspective. I don't know, maybe I'm in the minority because, like, Palpatine returning, like, That had already been done in the original extended universe, and granted, in the original extended universe, it made a lot more sense when it did happen. But even then, it was a lot of hijinks that happened to make that happen. So I guess like them bringing Palpatine back just because I was annoyed because they didn't do a very good job explaining it, but the act in and of itself honestly didn't bother me that much.
Yeah,
I just wish they would have handled him better. They kind of wasted Ian McDiarmid.
Oh,
I feel like that's the biggest crime that happened there.
No, it bothered me, but I think most people's argument is that it invalidates Anakin's sacrifice. I disagree because the most important thing at the end of Return of the Jedi is that he was able to make the correct choice and redeem himself. And so he's able to rescue his son. And
the death of Palpatine was not the great victory in that moment. It was the death of Darth Vader and Anakin returning.
Exactly. And so, yeah,
I love the novelization of Return of the Jedi, because the moment where like Vader is like warring with himself over what he's supposed to do, just like I can't remember the name of the author right now, but whoever it was, like, she nailed it.
And
like,
I mean, I have to say, there's so many parallels between Revenge of the Sith and The Last Jedi and those final battles, and
it's like poetry, it rhymes.
Anyway, I agree that Palpatine coming back was just really not done well and dumb.
It could have been done well.
But I think that most people have the incorrect gripe with it. And I think that Anakin still returning to the light side was
the important part.
Yeah, and that
was the emotional payoff that Lucas was gearing for.
When you're watching Star Wars, you don't care a lot about Palpatine dying, as you don't care about him dying as much as you care about Anakin's soul, because you know who he was and you want to see what he could have been, right? And so, anyway, sorry, that was a total tangent.
Comparing narrative tools and themes, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, and then here we have this character. My one gripe with you is that you did say he would stay dead.
I never specified for how long he would stay dead.
Yes, but you implied, and that was misleading.
It was. I'm not apologizing for that.
Anyway, so that I definitely agree with a lot of people being angry with you, because like I remember the moment you said that too, and I gave you this look and you shushed me, and I was like, okay, dude.
I knew what
fall on your own sword.
I fell on it. Yep.
Yeah. Ouch.
Yep.
So, like, honestly, Silver being mad at you for that, I 100% support, because that was messed up.
I'm not apologizing.
You're a brat. Anyway, we're going to move on and finish this review.
Fair enough. All right. Second, and more importantly, emotional weight and the invalidation of it. Your Hero Academia, inarguably, has the crux of its story balancing on Kurai's impact on Class 1A, anyone he's met, and the entire hero world. Without going into extensive detail, you spent 3 to 4 chapters leaning very hard into the emotional and social aftermath of Kurai's death. To me, him coming back to life kind of invalidates all that. You made the argument to me when I first presented this to you. For those unaware, I messaged Mataris concerning this after reading and listening, that for those chapters, the emotions were still there for the reader, and therefore still valid. In a weird way, I can see where you're coming from. However, there is one thing that this chapter's decision does that cannot be ignored. Emotional weight in the future of the story. While the story is still ongoing, Kurai's death was a massive climax. A lot of the emotional attachment that readers have for the story likely went to that event, and it caused them to care. But if the past characters aren't invalidated, then the future chapters almost certainly are. Let me give a brief example. In Avengers Endgame, Iron Man's sacrifice to defeat Thanos was arguably the climax of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. His death essentially made Endgame what it was, or at bare minimum, was the perfect capstone to the film. Yeah. Regardless of what you think of later Marvel, his death impacted the rest of the movies that followed.
Absolutely.
Yes, you are correct. Now, imagine if during Tony Stark's funeral, suddenly someone showed up and gave the perfect solution to bring Tony back. It would not only lessen the movie as a whole, but it would also make it seem like actions don't have consequences in any of the future installments. Maybe even in trying to rewatch the film by itself, because they've shown that they can have the answer for any problem that causes emotional weight. Any future emotional moments wouldn't matter in the slightest, or at minimum, they'd be ruined for the reader. Let's see. What was I gonna say? I had a counter argument for that. I think I had a counter argument for that, and then I lost it. It's like 11:30 where I'm at, so I'm having a hard time. Excuses. I mean, they do the same thing in Dragon Ball all the time, and everybody still loves that.
Yes, for different reasons.
For different reasons,
yes.
Yeah, I know. It's basically a joke at this point. Death has no consequence.
Yeah.
But how do I put this? I'm to make a response to your question. Why should you care about any future emotional impact? Well, that's the challenge to me now. Is because I know that I know, like, to me, stuff like what you described, it doesn't, like, if I were to go back, let's say Tony Stark came back somehow in one of the future movies, I would still be able to go back and watch Endgame and appreciate it for what it was. Like, honestly, it wouldn't ruin it for me if Tony was brought back later on because of the nature behind his sacrifice and the story that led up to it. That's what does it. That's what did it for me. And I know everybody can't see it that same way. Like, I just have and that's not to say that my way of viewing things is better. I just have a different way of looking at things than a lot of people do. So try to understand that this is the perspective that I am writing from. But yeah, I can understand your concern. So in that of itself, that is the new challenge for me. Is you kind of hit the nail on the head. Is like, why should you care about anything that I deem to be an emotional moment or try to build up to an emotional moment going forward? I've created a new challenge for myself in that I have to get even more creative and more intent on how I pull at the heartstrings for things going forward. Because just because we have a character who can do a rewind to bring people back to life, now we have I'll go more into this later on, but now basically what we're going to get with Aerie is we have the Superman conundrum. It's not a question of whether or not can she do these things, it's a question of whether or not should she do these things.
And I think also taking into account that death is still powerful, and clearly, even from the chapter we've just read, there's a part of him that's not right, that is different. This is not the Kurai we lost. Who went into battle to not throw to give his death meaning. I was about to say throw his life away, but I was like, no, that's not entirely. That's the wrong phrase entirely. It was to give his death meaning. And this is a being who has existed outside of time and space
for who knows how long at this point.
And who is altered beyond recognition almost. And there's still going to be remnants of who he is deep down, or who he was. But what he just experienced is something that's going to make him forever different. And, call it what you will, hacks, hardcore character development on the other end. We're not dealing with the same Kurai that we had before. And a part of him stayed dead. Yes. And I think that's something to take forward with you.
Yeah, I would certainly keep that in mind. Let's see. In playing devil's advocate, that brings me to the biggest question for you and the story. If the biggest emotional payoff was essentially nullified, why should I care about any new emotional moment? Why should I care about the story and what happens in the future? Ha! You thought that was the biggest emotional payoff? Ha! Oh boy. Okay, sure. Believe that if you want. I'm moving on before I start spitting out spoilers. I'm presenting this question because I don't want to lose interest, or I don't want this story to flop in its upcoming arc. But if I'm being honest, this moment feels like a genuine slap to the face, especially after 3 years of following this. I don't feel that this adds to your story, only that it takes it away. Well, honestly, I don't know what I can do to change your mind on that one. Like, I can argue things in circles, but like, you guys are recording your gut reactions to these chapters, and I really appreciate. I really like doing these. I do appreciate that I'm getting this input from you guys, that this is your first gut reaction. But just like you were talking earlier about how one bad episode can ruin the entire series retrospectively for somebody, I have to set myself the challenge of making a climax so good that parts of this story you guys will be able to look back on and be like, no, okay, I see what he was doing. Like, I didn't like it at the time, but it worked toward this, and this is good enough to justify those dips as they were.
And I think
that's the challenge I have to set for myself now.
And for me, saving Avatar Last Airbender. Actually, no, even Avatar Last Airbender, because The Great Divide is a horrid episode.
I love how they roast it even in their own.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna get over The Last Airbender abridging itself,
okay.
like in the story.
Stop! You're derailing me.
Sorry.
I think a part of enjoying art, whether it's literature or visual art or cinematic art, is accepting the weird quirks that the creator has. Like,
they ain't all gonna be winners.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm watching, for example, Demon Slayer, I freaking hate Zenitsu. He's pointless, but that doesn't change the fact that I really enjoy the show.
Yes.
And, he's better than Mineta at least, but he's still pointless and I can't stand him. I almost quit watching the show when they introduced that character. Genuinely, it took everything in me to keep watching the show, and I'm glad I did because I enjoy it.
Yep.
And I mean, with all of the news.
I mean, he pulled in clutch in the Entertainment District arc, I have to say.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And
because,
you keep interrupting me, bro.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm on thin ice with everybody today.
Yeah, man. It's late at night. I forgot there was a podcast happening. I'm done, man.
Okay.
I've been yelling at kids all day, both mine and other people's. I've been cutting grass. I'm done. It's been a long day, dude. I don't even know what I was talking about now.
You're talking about hating Zenitsu.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing. And I think, these guys know that as much as anyone. I think every fanfic writer knows that, and reader. That's why we have the freedom to go in and change things, and I love this medium. But I think, I would say as a follower of the story, because I really, you guys, you give me a lot more credit than I need, because I generally just listen and give him the opinions before you guys do. And every once in a while I'll give him an idea and he runs with it.
You guys on this one.
Yeah, I was.
She did not think this was a good idea.
100% with you guys. I thought it was dumb. I'm like, this is dragging so long. Like, you've got all these like rough drafts that you haven't even published yet. I'm not about it. And so I genuinely lost interest for a while, but I was like being a supportive wife and listening. And I'm glad that I pushed through and continued being a supportive wife and kept listening, because I am genuinely enjoying the story where it's at this point where I am. So that was a really long tangent.
Like the next couple chapters that came up.
The next couple chapters.
This was like the turnaround point.
Yeah. This next chapter, I think I enjoyed. I've never come around to the Ruby characters being in it. I still think it's dumb, but I'm glad you're enjoying it and you're having fun, and I do enjoy some of the moments. So, that being said, sorry, back to Silver's review.
Let's see. You need to write for yourself more than your audience. That's factual, but still it doesn't feel good on this end. Well, you have my apologies on uninjured feelings, but I'm not going to apologize for the direction I chose to take the story in. Let's see. And to an extent, I get it. There's only so much you can write when taking away One for All with Kurai, but I genuinely thought the story was going to go in an interesting, different direction that greatly diverges from the main canon. Don't give up on that yet entirely. Once you've heard this next chapter, you'll understand what I mean, but don't give up on that quite yet. Maybe All for One gets obsessed with retrieving the new power that he made as an experiment, because now it's the only thing that can genuinely stop him with One for All gone. Maybe Mina would have to train Deku because she knew Energon and Kai the best, and she would have to get over her grief in order to help Deku. Maybe the villains get even more restless after knowing that Kai is not, in fact, going to be around anymore. I considered all of these things, I promise. And they definitely, like, all the factors that you just mentioned. Sorry, 2 of the 3 factors you just mentioned, they definitely have something to do with the next few chapters going forward. And I can come back to that later. Let's see. I don't want to be like a Star Wars fan and say the story is going bad simply because my own expectations aren't being met, because that's not it at all. But I'm simply saying that, since you kept going back to how One for All was so pivotal to the story, there's a plethora of other avenues to take aside from from removing the biggest emotional payoff to your story. If I'm being 100% honest, I currently do not care anymore for any future emotional moments in the story because of this. If you can make me change my mind, great, but my faith in you is rather shattered if I'm being blunt. Well, at least it's not shattered fragments. I'm funny. With all of that said, let me tell you what I did like. I know, 2 pages of nothing but criticism, and now I talk about what I like. Shocker, right? Hey, there's something you like in there. Let's pay attention to that. Let's see. You genuinely caught me off guard with Eri being the mystery woman, and thankfully not in a stupid shock value way. It makes a lot of sense in hindsight with all the foreshadowing. Tattered red cape belonging to Mirio, her taking the name Lemillion, etc. And I do really like how you presented her. As of now, she's probably shaping up to be my new favorite part of the story simply because everyone wanted to see how she'd be a hero even in the original canon. Okay, cool. If you're looking forward to that, you're going to like the next part of the story. You're going to like the next part of the story. And I would like to be interested in how she A, got one for all, and B, traveled from the future, probably Akurui with a particle accelerator, but I'm interested in the details. You made her character really good throughout the fight, and even showed how she can be a great character in her own right. Not necessarily a hero, but that's what I really like. I hope we see a lot from her. I'm interested to see how she will affect things. You will be seeing a lot more of her. I'll spoil, quote unquote, for that for you. She's gonna be one of, if not the main character going forward from here. I'm interested to see how she will affect it. Oh yeah, she'll affect things. She will definitely affect things. Not all of them in good ways though. We'll yeah. Let's see. 2 pages of critiques and only a paragraph or 2 of what I liked. If it comes across as mean, I know. But I'm not doing this to be mean. I'm doing it because I spent too much time invested in the story and it would be a shame if I left now. I truly hope you make the rest of the story incredible and change my perspective, but like I said before, you need to do a lot in order to do that, my friend. I wish you and Becca the best of luck on this, Silver. Well, like I said earlier, that's my goal at this point, is because, like, I had a feeling people were going to be getting disillusioned with this by this point because of the stunt that I pulled. So now I gotta set the goals even higher. And, you know, as a writer, you know, one of the main reasons I do fan fictions is because I want to improve as a writer, and this is one of the tools that I'm using for myself to kick it into a new gear. Let's see. All right. Well, thank you, Silver4700, for your review. It's always a pleasure to hear from you.
All right. Atomical. I feel betrayed and emotionally torn. Sir, you have caused a war that you yourself must fix, armed with nothing but the following chapters.
Well, good thing I got some real good armaments then.
You have been given the mercy of redeeming yourself.
Well, I appreciate that mercy. I will do my utmost to take advantage of it.
All right, thank you, Atomical.
Thank you, Atomical.
Treadly Tayao. Unexpectedly mind blown. Back in black, Kurai Hogosha. So, here's my theories. Eri was set back by Akurui, inherited one for all, but costed more than a few heroes, including Bakugo in the future.
Ooh.
Kurai will still be listed as Kai to keep KIA. Killed in action, to keep enemies in the dark and his family safe.
Ooh.
Kurai will probably become an anti-hero previously teased from the battle with Overhaul.
Interesting.
Since the upcoming arc is Heroes Rising, future Eri will be the new OC instead of Souls and play a bigger role for both Izuku and Kurai.
Interesting.
Deku died fighting Shigaraki. I love that, Shiggy, in the future, and as the rest of Class 1A. That's how Shiggy stored. Sorry, I love that. That's how Shigaraki stored a lot of quirks at his base, and Akurui became the last stand in the Pillar of Hope.
You know, you're gonna find a few things in there that are actually correct.
And you're onto something.
You're onto some stuff with those. That's actually pretty good. That's pretty good.
All right.
That's pretty good. Let's see. All right, Triddly Tayo, thank you very much for your review.
Yeah. All right, Joe Clone, how dare you?
Oh boy.
You promised us a dead protagonist.
I gave you a dead protagonist.
Not a dead and then reborn one.
I don't know if reborn is the right word.
Technically, you didn't lie. This is manipulative behavior, my good sir. I agree, buddy. You and I are always, like, on the same page with your reviews. Joe Clone, I'm telling you, Joe Clone always has like very similar thoughts to me. All right.
Oh, man.
And what better evidence to prove my point than Joker laugh? Future girl is airy? Well, that killed my theory. I was thinking thanks to her light-based attacks and speed, she was going to be the daughter of Ruby Rose and Akurui.
Oh, man, that would have been cool. That would have been cool.
That is kind of adorable.
Yeah, he originally thought that her quirk was light speed, and she was basically she was the Flash.
I like it. Even the red cape and dark hair made me think that. Yeah, he was trying to throw you guys off. Sorry. I guess I was thinking too far ahead in the future. But given that I forgot she had vestiges speaking to her, I can't say you didn't foreshadow One for All's return.
I'm honestly surprised more people didn't jump on that.
It just,
that was one thing that I couldn't cover. Like, it needed to be in the story for things to make sense later. But I kept trying to figure out, how do I pass this off? And then I just eventually came to a point. I was like, I can't pass this off. I just had to put it in here and let people do with it what they will.
It just didn't cross my mind because we were so hyper-focused on Kai's promised death. Which you have undone.
Yeah, I did.
All that turmoil, all the emotion. What was it all for?
It was for that experience, the emotion and turmoil that you receive while you're reading the story.
Granted, finding out Aerie was the future girl was genuinely surprising and pleasantly so. But I was with all the others in believing she would fail at reviving the two-week-old corpse. The fact that you made her have rewind plus One for All, you're raving mad.
That has been well established.
I suppose the world without it was never to be. Nice to know, though, that you tried.
You'll see.
So now Kai and Deku have essentially switched quirks and therefore protagonist roles as well.
I don't know that I'd say that.
It's gonna be Kai with One for All versus All for One, while Deku with Energon / Inaika is on the side. Oh, and I suppose Bakugo has to force himself to fight someone, and it's not his character to tolerate getting shown up.
You're not wrong there, but I'm not gonna force Bakugo into Bakugo certainly still has his own merits. I would hope that this story has not gotten Bakugo to the point where he's just a useless side character who's there for expositions and some explosions every now and again. I don't think I've done that to him.
Kai's complete breakdown after being stolen from heaven is heartbreaking and infuriating. I've heard testimonies from people who've seen it, and they've said that they didn't want to leave.
Yep.
Of course, this version of heaven is not the same, but I get why he'd be unhappy after experiencing so much of it, only for his life to be brought back to the dark, probably demon-infested world of Earth.
You're not wrong. Yeah, he has rights to be pissed.
Like I told Light Hero Kaiser, the only possible singular word I describe this chapter is a doozy. The ride was unforgettable and abrupt, and I want to know what the heck is happening next. I'll see you in the future, Mataris. Where's that DeLorean?
Coming in a minute.
Oh, man.
Let's see. All right. Let's see.
How about that Mando episode? Anyway, moving on. No spoilers. Last Robin, are you going to take this one?
I'll take this one.
All right.
Let's see. Okay, I missed the last review, so I'm encompassing both chapters in one review. I'd first like to address your maniacal laughter about how you, quote, didn't lie, and say, yes, you did. No, I didn't. I don't care about technicalities and omissions. Half-truths are lies, and omitting the truth is a lie of omission. Both lies.
Yes, sir.
I've been told enough half-truths to know that they're lies. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Well.
Yes.
If you look at the words strictly, no, I didn't lie.
Shut up.
Okay. There was an intent to deceive, so... There was how do I put this? There was an intent to deceive behind the truth of the words, which is how the best lies are told.
Hey, either way, my dude, you have officially lost the trust of the majority of your fan base.
I don't know why people should trust me to begin with when I tell this, when I give them hints and stuff.
Maybe the repeated phrase, "I don't lie to my readers."
And they believe me?
Yeah, don't. The wild thing
just
is...
entertainment in general. I don't trust I don't trust like film creators and stuff whenever they say anything anymore. Like I don't trust it. Like, because like it's their job to get you. It's their job to get you hooked on what they're selling. It's not their job to tell you the truth.
All right.
And everybody loves them for it.
Continue. I'm not going to comment.
All right. Let's see. I feel like at this point you've made it a goal to pull one over on your audience at every possible opportunity to the point where it's old. No, well, I argued that point earlier. No, shock factor was not the main point of this. Makes it hard to believe that anything will happen anymore because you're looking for a gotcha. Now that time travel has entered the mix, I can't believe anything will stay the way that it is moving forward. Death reversal brings the same issue. Let's just time travel and reverse death. We've done it before, and I'm sure you've got a reason why not, but the option exists in the world. You now have a Deus Ex Machina that is somehow greater than Kurai Ex Machina. Although I'm sure Kurai is responsible for this as well. I'll move on. And of course, I said you would need one for all for the story, and you were right. You were right. I don't dispute that. But yeah, like I mentioned earlier, well, like what we're gonna get with Eri now is more of is the Superman conundrum. Like, not can she do it? It's a question of should she do it. Let's see. All this past, I have issues with how everything went about here. Let's start with Eri. I've addressed the death reversal aspect. Don't like it. It's too strong. Having her inherit one for all is a good angle, but I'm guessing somehow, especially based on this preview, you somehow concocted a scheme to extract one for all from beyond the grave, which doesn't sit well with me. Once again, it's too easy. It cheapens the loss of a quirk if you can somehow fish it out. If getting rid of one for all messes up the story, you shouldn't have gotten rid of it in the first place. There are too many easy Deus Ex Machinas in this story. There are too many easy ways out that they can take now. I also have a problem with how Eri fought the thugs. Apparently Eri, after her traumas and pain she has received at the hands of another, will now beat bad guys within an inch of their lives, breaking 100 bones to subdue them even though it's entirely unnecessary. This is not required to subdue a thug. I'm sure you have a reason she acts like this, but I don't believe that it matches Eri's character. Well, without giving too much of a spoiler, like we mentioned, the Kurai that we have now is not the same Kurai that we knew 2 weeks ago in story. This Eri is significantly older than the little girl who needed to be protected, and now she has power.
And we're about to get in a lot of that, so probably just move forward.
Okay, I'll move. All right, fine. Yeah, I'll move forward from that. Let's see. Now let's talk about the obvious element here: the death and subsequent resurrection. Straight up, I don't like it. If you were going to do it, you should have done it quicker. You went through the whole grieving process that now had no purpose. It's like a slap in the face. Why does everybody have a thing about me slapping them in the face? I mean, again, that's open to the individual's interpretation. To me, what's important is that the grieving process had and will continue to have an effect on the characters themselves.
Whether it makes them jaded, whether they are okay with having grieved because they realize this person they have is not the person they lost.
Yeah, that's not a it did have I wouldn't have put it in the story if it didn't have a pointed purpose toward the end of this story. Let's see. Kai's death had a large emotional impact on the majority of the audience. Bringing Kurai back cheapened that moment. I know you're going to say you experienced the emotions, therefore giving it all the validity it needed. Well, I guess people do know me. You've said it a couple of times on chat, but that's no longer true. This new revelation has, maybe not entirely, retroactively devalued his death. Death is no longer a real and permanent consequence or stake. The fact that death can be reversed makes me less invested in the future character's well-being. This kind of expectation betrayal effectively reduces a reader's trust in the storytelling. If death is no longer permanent and time travel exists, I don't know what to believe anymore. Any moment with emotional weight now has an inherent suspicion of reversal. I mean, how do I put I mean, like, I think depending on the story that you're reading, I generally have a suspicion of inherent reversal, like, whenever I go into media.
You're a very cynical person.
This is true. So, yeah, maybe that's just me. Let's see. Now for the funeral itself, it feels pointless with his resurrection. Now that he's alive again, it feels like an opportunity to have every character in the story walk on stage and talk about how great your original character is. It's a world of heroes. Great heroes, UA alums, and students have often died in the line of duty. They didn't get every great hero showing up at their funeral, and UA gyms were named after them. It might have kept its emotional weight if he stayed dead, but now it just feels all self-serving. That stings a little bit, but honestly, hero students do die, but I think it happens a lot less than you're expecting it, than you seem to be under the impression that it does. Like, it's not a common occurrence that it happens. Also, most of this, like, how do I put, like, basically, like, how do you think it would have gone if All Might died, like, right after becoming a big name? Like, how would the world have looked right after that? That's kind of, like, the social impact that would have had is what I tried to emulate in this scenario. Regardless of whether or not Kurai was going to come back, the world at large, they didn't know that. The characters around it, they didn't know that he was going to come back. So they had to experience these emotions and events as they played out. If I just skipped all of that, that would have been cheap. If I just went, oh, he's dead. Oh, now he's alive again. I just went straight from A to Z. That would have been cheap. That would have been sloppy writing on my part. Let's see. Let's see. More minor details. There was an intruder, and they called any licensed student to assist, but it would have made more sense just to have the teachers. I don't think they would have blindly invited every provisionally licensed student to just charge in and fight. That felt more like a reason to get the whole class over there, and I think it should have been easier for Eri to sneak in. Give her a school card ID. Bam, easy. Not easy. Getting a hold of... Do you remember at the beginning of the year, like, someone trespassed on school without the proper ID? Like, wall shut up. And they've upgraded their security since then. Like, her getting on campus was not meant to be easy by any means. And where would she get the materials for a fake school ID? One that is good enough to fool Nezu. Like, I don't, like, unless Akururi was on her side, I don't see that happening. Like if Akururi was, like, on her side to begin with, it was like, yeah, I'll sneak you in, then I could see that happening. But the Akururi that we're familiar with up to this point, he has no knowledge of her. He didn't know that she was coming. And even if he did, he would have been like, okay, let me just go explain this to people instead of giving her... Yeah, no, there was no way she was going to get an ID to sneak onto campus. Let's see. What else is he going to say? As for all the licensed students going into fight, that was basically a snap decision. And not a good one on the part of the teachers. Because if I had to put words to their line of reasoning, it would have been that they were like, these students are probably looking for an excuse to fight whoever's coming to make their day worse. Like,
that's not really a teacher decision.
It's not really. It was. I didn't say it was a good decision. I'm just saying that it was the one that was made. Like, you've been to funerals. Like, if something crazy like this happened, not everybody's going to be in their right state of mind. Bad decisions are going to be made.
Yeah, I don't know.
Let's see.
I don't really agree with that.
Okay. Let's see. Kurai could have been a martyr, a symbol to rally behind, but now he's back instead in a way that feels easy and cheap. I like that you gave him memory of the afterlife and that he's upset he's back, but I do not think that he should be back. You're using the word upset a little liberally there. Let's see. Every problem Kurai has in this story is solved too easily. They're not given enough time to have any real consequences. Quirk burns my brain, magic necklace. Lose an arm, magic new one that works with Energon. PTSD dealt with in a couple of chapters. No,
it's just not dealt with.
No, just no. I'm not going to skirt around that. I'm just going to tell you point blank. You are wrong there. I don't know if that's because you haven't been paying attention. PTSD has not been dealt with, not by a long shot. Let's see. Death revived. I feel like there's so much potential for personal triumph and so much tackling of the side effects of these problems, but they're just dealt with quickly and moved past. I'll keep reading, and I hope you can get me on board with this, but I think his review got cut off. He might have hit the word limit. Oh. Storm alerts.
All right, let me go grab it.
So I think his review got cut off there, but basically, yeah. I know you guys aren't happy with this decision. I think you oversimplified a lot of the issues that you brought up in the past, like no real consequences. Quirk burns my brain, magic necklace. Yeah, magic necklace that cost his brother the ability to be autonomous. That hurt him. Obviously not physically, but that hurt Kurai. That changed him as a person. Losing his arm, again, physical pain. Magic new one that works with Energon. No, not magic new. He had to... His brother, his bedridden brother had to help him get back on his feet, basically. And, the pain that caused him and, the experience in and of itself, that didn't just go away. he almost got killed by a 2-bit criminal. Kirishima had to step in and save him just because this criminal had a quirk that was kind of similar to Moonfish. Kurai got triggered immediately. It was like almost catatonic. And like the symptoms have become less obvious going forward from that. But he has not dealt with his PTSD, not by a long shot. And if you think that this is not going to add to that problem, oh boy. Oh boy. But all right, all in all, I will say thank you for your review. I do appreciate your honesty. It's cool that you're mad at the story. I can even understand being irritated at me because of the way that I portrayed things, but like I said, I'm not going to apologize for the way that the story's going, and maybe yeah. I'm gonna move on now.
All right, thank you, Last Robin.
Thank you, Robin.
Guest. Wait a minute. This means that they failed without him.
Yep.
I was waiting for someone to bring that up.
I was waiting for someone to notice that. Yep. Yeah. They definitely. Yeah. Things did not work out without One for All around.
All right, Light Hero Kaiser. Most interesting, great chapter, mate. Can't wait for more. Kaito, with his left arm in a sling. We were both so wrong about that girl from the future.
Yeah, it seems like it. They really should have worked it out, but oh well.
Yeah, you really should have, you idiot.
Do you want your other arm broken? But this time I'll have to berserker break it.
Pale's right. Shutting up now.
Wow, you're abusive to your characters.
Blade
Says the kettle calling the pot black.
Blade Hero Light and Bow Hero Impact signing out.
Thank you for your review, Kaiser.
All right, whoa.
Oh boy, it's Silly
Holy
Kita.
cow, that's a long review. All right, Silly Kita. Readers, we've been tricked. We've been backstabbed, and we've quite possibly been bamboozled.
Is that a red? Yes, red versus blue crow. Okay, I gotta try this.
Okay.
Readers, we've been tricked, we've been backstabbed, and we've quite possibly been bamboozled.
Yes, red versus blue. I know you hate it.
Oh man. Okay. My roommate. That's one that I think that show is purely a nostalgia trip for most people. I just
fair enough.
Never understood from day one.
It's got funny.
Okay.
Well, the earlier seasons have funny. I don't know what happened later on, but
okay. My roommate once again thanks you for scaring him awake when I let out a shout of incredulity at nearly 2 a.m. upon realization of who it was that you've been teasing us with for weeks now.
I'm sorry?
I don't know whether to curse you or thank you for such a bold decision regarding the story. I love to be taken by surprise, but it is difficult for me not to accuse you of a convenient backtrack following the realization that you have taken out an essential component of the story.
Man, everybody's spitting fire today.
The main reason I restrain myself from doing so is because this is clearly not something that you threw together on a whim. Whether or not it proves to be an effective plot device has yet to be seen, so I will withhold final judgment for the time being. You've asked for 2 more chapters to prove that this was a good idea, and because thus far you've proven to have a bounty of those, I'll choose to believe you.
All right.
This is not to say I hated the reveal or its contents by any means, simply that it feels as though at this moment it might be a little too convenient of a fix for a mistake you created for yourself.
I didn't make a mistake.
But enough of that, let's break down the chapter as it played out. The battle between Eri and the rest of the Hero Corps students was mostly pretty good. Mostly a pretty good read to start with.
Okay.
I could make the argument that Amajiki and Haido were underutilized, but it did go to show how capable their opponent was. You made a good use of the other various characters' quirks, and even tossed a few that I could very easily belong to other kids in the Hero Course. The girl with the astral projection quirk certainly caught my attention. I do hope we get to see more of her in the future, whether it be in the next movie or war arcs.
I might be able to arrange that.
Tetsu getting used like an oversized aluminum bat was almost as funny as Kirishima getting yeeted a few chapters ago. So you have successfully checked the funny box for that installment, sir.
Yes.
I see once again we once again have Deku going through a copy phase for his inherited quirk, much like how he first started out with strictly replicating All Might's moves. Him doing a Kamehameha with Weiss's assistance was an unexpected duo, but it really worked for me.
All right.
I did like how he didn't completely rely on what he'd seen Kurai do with Energon. He switched to the melee mode once he realized he wasn't expecting to go anywhere with distance fighting. And even though he was clearly struggling with the mechanics of his new power, it was nice to see that he's not just throwing away everything that he's learned so far in favor of a shiny new slate entirely.
Yeah, like the mechanics of triggering the power are a little different, but like like everything that he all the hand-to-hand combat training that he did, he could do that without his quirk. So it stands to reason that he could still do it with this new one too.
Now, regardless of how I feel about the identity of the mystery girl, her reveal as Eri was masterfully done. It was a very cinematic moment when I could easily see playing out in an anime-style fashion.
All right.
I honestly felt as though I could sympathize with Deku's shock factor in that moment because, oh, damn, you got me. And apparently his roommate. You were right. Oh gosh, you scrolled so I can't see. You were right that I could easily see. I'm losing it. Sorry, my eyes are crossing. I'm going to let you finish it.
You were right that I could easily see the signs in hindsight very easily because I was distracted by other details I thought to be pertinent. The voices of One for All, her respect and admiration of Kai, her wearing Togeki's cape, calling herself Lemillion. That one really should have given it away for me. It all fits together very well. So well done on that end. Well, thank you. I will say that I'm just taken a little aback by how different she acts from the Eri we are familiar with. But I'll venture a guess now and say that if she's old enough to look like she belongs in the hero course and has journeyed through time itself to come back, I'm guessing she's been through some crap. I know she already went through a lot as a toddler and a child, but my gut says that was just the tip of the iceberg for this version of Eri. Something had to happen for her to be able to so callously beat criminals to a bloody pulp near death, and I do hope the next couple of chapters go to some way of explaining how that could come about. Once again, not to say that I dislike this development. If anything, her involvement in all of this has got me very excited to see what comes next for the story. Okay, yeah, so this lines up with what I was saying earlier.
I'm glad somebody's excited.
Okay, good. Somebody's okay with this. Let's see. Brief side note, I do like that she's not able to use One for All very efficiently yet, as evidenced by her needing to use her original quirk to rewind any damage done to her body by the second power. Some might call it convenient, but this is one pass I don't mind handing out, as it's clear that even if it is a quick fix for her not being able to handle the quirk's full power, it's still something she cannot do easily, and thus might even go on to become something of a handicap for her. Mina definitely threw me for a loop with her behavior at first. After all, I'd have thought she'd jump at any chance for Kurai to be brought back. But when I stopped and thought about it, I realized that not only would her judgment be impaired at this time, but her gut instinct would probably have told her that Eri's offer was a trap anyway. Once I realized who she was, I knew that things were going to turn out fine, but Mina and the teachers couldn't. Although, speaking of things being fine, they're not. This is probably the biggest thing that saved this plot twist for me, in that even though Kurai has been returned to them, he is not the same as they remember him.
Oh, yay, someone got it!
Nor does he view this development as a gift. We knew he had gone to heaven, but I really liked your handling of what that would mean for someone who, by earthly standards, has a lot to return to, because from his perspective, he has lost so much more than anything that Earth can offer him, with the sole saving grace being that he can be with Mina again.
Yep.
Yeah, that's like one checkbox on a really big bingo board. Yeah, he's not happy. Okay, I'm glad somebody got it. Let's see. Even then, it's not as though their relationship is an insta-fix for this situation, which I especially liked. Don't get me wrong, I like their relationship, and I felt for Mina these last few chapters, but I certainly would have accused you of using cheap tactics to pull on our heartstrings if she just ran up to him and convinced him that everything is going to be okay. Even though he's admitted that he still loves and wants to be with her, Kurai clearly damaged in more ways than one, and this is something he's going to have to work through with her and with himself. It seems to me that their love for one another is more of a first step in him being able to reconcile with these new developments, as opposed to the cure for his ill circumstances. I love it, and I can easily see why Phase 5/depression is not about to end just because he's back. You're not wrong. Let's see. The scene with him slowly regaining his senses was truly heartbreaking. So despite narrowly avoiding being called an emotional cheap shot by me, you managed to tug on my heartstrings with that interaction. All right, score. All right, I'm getting somewhere here. Togata slowly putting things together about Eri was very interesting to me because I was reading it. It did occur to me that other than Aizawa, he probably is the one who would recognize her before anyone else did. I think the reason their teacher didn't do so was probably because he wasn't really looking at her beyond the notion that she posed a threat to his students and their school. But Togata had the chance to really pay attention and keep an eye out for details that could help him read the whole situation, as opposed to what was only being presented or what he wanted to see. He really looked, like I'm sure Night Eye taught him to do, and even managed to de-escalate the situation when some of the other students were looking to get things moving again. I also really liked how he kept trying to find reasons for his gut instinct to be wrong so that he could be absolutely sure before he let himself even start to believe what he was starting to think. Again, something I think he inherited from Night Eye. Honestly, like, I think that's I didn't really put that in there on purpose. Like that, I can definitely see how he'd be right. But like this is one of those things where I was just like, yeah, this seems like what Lemillion would do if he were in this situation. I guess that's on me for not thinking about like where did this attribute come from, which is something that I need to be more mindful of. Like I'm pretty confident saying like I know how each of these characters will react in given X situation, but something I need to get more on top of that I've been trying to work on is that I need to know why do they react. Like I need to know the ins and outs of why do they react the way that they do to certain situations. So thank you for pointing that out. I need to work on that. Let's see. Kurai's deadpan delivery of the fact that he's alive and wants Eri to explain everything also made me laugh a fair amount more than it should have because of just how done he is with everything already. And as far as everyone else is concerned, he hasn't even been back for an hour. One more side note. Mind explaining why Kurai's One for All lightning turned black? I know you've got a deliberate reason for this, and I doubt it was just for aesthetics' sake. Yeah, like it's basically it is a visual reflection of like his mental state, if I have to put it down really simply. Like, you know, Energon was a quirk that derived from starlight. You know, light can take any number of any colors. That's why the lightning that he generated from One for All originally was all the colors. But now he's just drained of everything. There is just nothing inside of there's like almost nothing left inside of him of what he once was. So he has One for All, but he has changed so much that the quirk now reflects that turmoil, I guess is the word I'll use.
He's a mood ring.
Yeah, he's a mood. Yeah, his One for All version is a mood ring. Oh no.
Sorry, your wife is officially a savage because it's past her bedtime.
Yep. I can't say that I don't deserve all the verbal beatings this chapter, but I'm still gonna snap back.
I still love you.
I know. I'm still gonna snap back on some of it. Let's see. So I hope that answers your question. All in all, this has certainly not been one of my favorite chapters, mostly due to how I question the nature of this backtrack, but I did still enjoy it. Adding to its credit is that regardless of the events that transpired within, it's a well-written piece, which is something that I am glad to say I regularly expect whenever I see that this story has been updated. Cheers, mate. I look forward to seeing just what happened in Eri's future, especially since, unless I'm understanding the context of the preview incorrectly, we're getting our sassy boy Akadori some time in the spotlight. You did not misinterpret that. We are definitely getting some sassy boy. And last, Endeavor to be All Might.
Oh my goodness, here's a nice long one.
All right, he's the last one. He's the last one. We can do this. We can get through this. Let's
try to stay awake.
All right, last review. Endeavor to be All Might.
All right, spoilers for the story in this review. Skip ahead if you want to read with fresh eyes.
I appreciate that he always does that.
Yeah. I don't hate this plot twist. Well, that's refreshing. In fact, I rather think I like it.
Ooh.
Before I get into
somebody likes my ideas.
Oh, that'll help your pity party. Here we go. All right. Before I get into my breakdown of the last few chapters, let me say that honestly, I find myself applauding your audacity, for lack of a better term, and even the confidence with which you execute it. We live in a culture today full of people who so eagerly consume spoilers and hang on to every word of content creators to a degree that I would call unhealthy.
Okay, somebody gets it.
When these given hints and straight up lies are contradicted by the final product, people merely laugh, wave it aside, and claim it is part of the act leading into whatever piece of media there is that, of course, they can't tell us the truth about what's coming, because that would ruin the surprise. You simply took advantage of this predisposed mentality and its aspect of entertainment in order to play with our expectations, although I somehow doubt people will be as forgiving of you as they were with Andrew Garfield regarding Spider-Man No Way Home. Yeah, as much as I adore my husband, I don't think people like him as much as Andrew Garfield.
No. He's very
likable.
He seems like a very lovely individual.
You make nice second impressions sometimes.
Yeah, I really need... There's a shirt that says, I make great second impressions, but nobody ever knows that. I need to get that t-shirt.
Yeah, I'll have to find it for you, love.
Father's Day gift.
I say that with love. All right. I lost my spot. Oh, there we go. Shame that. Even so, before I get into the review itself, allow me to assure you that this story continues to hold my interest, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
All right, seems like we're gonna end this review section in a high... Actually, I gotta say, like, I think Joe Clone was pretty. I don't think he was quite as for it as Endeavor to be All Might, but not everybody's been giving me crap. Yeah. So.
The messages left behind by Kurai were about what I expected, though some of the recipients took me by surprise, just a tad. I guess I don't really know how long he spent recording goodbyes, but I was really only expecting some last words for Mina, Deku, and maybe Ida and Akurui. That being said, I'm glad you didn't drag things out to the point of him leaving individualized farewells for everyone in the class, but kept it somewhere brief.
I had neither the time or the inclination for that.
By having him briefly address the others whom he considered closer friends, or who might need extra encouragement in the wake of his death. This way allowed me to see who is really important to him and why, such as Kirishima being his comrade. And you know what, you're gonna have to read it because I'm way too tired. I'm sorry.
Such as Kirishima being his comrade in Fat Gun's agency, Ida for their friendship, Deku for their brotherhood, etc. I had to have it so that he left very personalized messages for like a few people. Mm-hmm. Like he only really left personalized messages for Akudori and Mina. Yeah. So that ought to tell you how he regards them. According to, like, that's not to say that he holds everyone else in lower esteem. Those were the way I thought about it is like okay, if he had to have somebody by him when he was about to die, who would it be, and what would he want to say to them? Mm-hmm. And then he ended up with Bakugo. Let's see.
It'd be that way sometimes.
Let's see. Mina's mental deterioration was masterfully narrated, with you managing to pull back each time before her breakdowns crossed the threshold from heartbreaking into cringeworthy. In some stories, it simply becomes a routine pattern of, oh, this person is sad now. Let the crying commence. Okay, crying done. Let's move back to sunshine and rainbows. Her and every other character's breakdowns were unique to them, which meant that I had something different to look forward to in each reaction to the messages and memories left for them. Well done, sir. Thank you. Let's see. All right, getting my bruised ego massaged a little bit here. Let's see. Getting Shuken more fleshed out as a character was truly a delight, even in spite of the circumstances that surrounded it. Yeah, like the more you guys call out for Shuken and Akudori, like the more I enjoy writing them.
Yeah.
Like they're fun characters to write for. Like I see why you guys like them. Like I understand why you guys like them, and like I guess because you guys liked them better first, it gives me an encouragement to pursue these characters a little more in depth in a way that I might not have otherwise. Yeah. And yeah, they're really fun. Let's see. I can now see him as more than the comedy cousin character, because now I understand exactly what his suffering did to him and his family. However, this only furthers my need for a side story with Akurui as the main character and Shuken for his sidekick. Speaking of the Sass Masters, seeing the Genesis scenes for each of his inventions for Kurai was a real treat to read. I may not have learned anything new from that chapter, but that doesn't take away from my enjoyment of getting to see Akurui as he was when he was on his own 2 feet. Matter of fact, I understand why you keep our viewership of child Akurui to a minimum. The world simply isn't ready for that level of savagery and sass. Seriously though, you did a really good job of capturing everyone's interactions as they would have been in the past and not just defaulting them to their current behavioral patterns. Yeah, I think I talked about like that was really hard to do. Like doing the flashback chat, because like I almost fall into this pattern. It's like, well, this wasn't that long ago for them. This is like a few months ago, so their interactions like it can because like so much has happened. They've grown into more than what they were. So like going back, like I had to go back and watch like some of the earlier episodes of My Hero Academia to like try and get a feel again for like how these characters interacted with each other at that time.
Yeah.
So like that was very displacing for me. But I got through it. It's a good it was a good exercise.
Cool.
Let's see. Side note: Kurai's farewell to his brother more than any of the others made me tear up. It was everything I hoped it would be, because I truly believed that it contained everything Akurui needed to hear and prepare him to move on in that moment. What's that?
But then.
The chapter that focused on Mina's brothers and the other people across Japan who Kurai had affected with his actions took me by surprise. Or rather, the idea of it did. You certainly could have done without it, but you clearly love this story enough to go the extra mile in fleshing out the world at large in a manner such as this, which I cannot help but respect. I might have suggested that you could have introduced her brothers in a more definitive manner than a text message earlier on in the story, so that their chapter would have had more impact in its own right, but there's nothing to be done at this point, so I'll move on. Yeah, like, in hindsight, I definitely wish I would have introduced her brothers earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like if I had to go back and do it again, I would have them like help her pack up her room to move into the dorms or something like that.
Yeah, that would be good.
Like, yeah, so like if I could go back and do it again, that's probably where I would have stuck them in. Like, it wouldn't have to be a super long scene, but that's a good point that like I think some of the, like when I was doing this chapter, some of the other people were like, it seems like you kind of shoehorned them in. I was like, yeah, a little bit, but I did want these characters to be a part of the story going forward, so it was better for me to introduce them then and there in the manner that I did, and not just have them come up for something really important. Then it's like, who are these guys, and having absolutely little to no context at all behind them. So that was a little bit of a scramble to correct a mistake on my part, a mistake that I didn't even realize that I had made. But that's part of the whole learning process for me. Let's see. Seeing Mako's take from a civilian standpoint of the events at Fukuoka were a solid choice to make a well-loved chapter of yours feel fresh and somewhat new once again. Knowing what I did about how the fight concluded allowed me to have a greater appreciation of what the hero world looked like in that moment of uncertainty. Kai won, and people sung his praises for weeks after the fact, but that was because they had been given a sense of security from the victory. Reading that chapter really drove home the feeling of how it must have felt to understand that an entire city's fate is in the hands of a teenager. Never mind if Hawks and Endeavor could beat the other Nomu. If Kai had failed in his fight, that monster could have done almost as much damage as the High End, if not more, due to the Spore Quirk. The High End Nomu definitely would have done more damage individually, but if the Shadow Nomu had been able to recuperate and like spread its spores, that definitely would have caused an even bigger problem. It's the COVID Nomu. That's what I should have called it.
Oh my gosh. There was like this thing, like I don't know much about Coachella other than that it's like a really weird rave that happens in the desert. But I saw this post about this like influencer who went to Coachella wearing this really weird rave dress, because that's what people do, and then everyone taking pictures of her thought it looked like coronavirus, and so everyone like attacked her online for dressing up as the coronavirus. Jeez. And it was just like hilarious because she was just like a weird teenage TikToker who thought she was wearing a weird dress to get attention.
Oh no.
And she definitely got attention.
Ooh,
It like destroyed her life though. Poor thing. But yeah, I was reading up and I was like, oh dang. See, this is why, kids, we don't go to raves in the middle of desert dressed like
Or try to make it big on TikTok.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a random tangent.
Make it big on fanfiction. What? Let's see. The crowds didn't see a champion who would see them through without fail. They saw a kid fighting for his life, and I'm sure a lot of them thought that it was a fight he was going to lose.
Yep.
Another surprise rearing its sneaky head in this narrative was your handling of Endeavor following Kurai's death. I'm glad that your distaste for the character did not taint his portrayal, because I found his scene of reflection to be immaculately on point for him. Thank you for honoring the spirit of the narrative instead of indulging in a personal bias toward the flame hero. That was a... Yeah.
He's getting better at that.
That's still really challenging for me. That's really challenging for me because like fanfiction is a way to make the story what I want it to be, and it's really
to get out extra aggression that you're dealing with from life. It's a good thing you didn't write that chapter this week.
Oh god. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh man, no, that would not have. Oh no.
Need some serious like action writing therapy this week.
I really do. Let's see. Side note: said bias is entirely justified, but he's got a great character arc, and I worried slightly that you might try to undercut or shunt it to the side of your own plot devices. So thank you for proving me wrong. You're welcome. Yeah, I'm trying to put the integrity of the story. That's I want to make a good story, and I want these characters to act as these characters should to these changed scenarios that I've created. I'm glad that they're still coming across as their own characters instead of just like my strange take on them.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Fat Gum and Gang Orca mourning for their student in their own ways were equally touching. Orca for having been affected by his intern as much as the other way around, if not more so, and Fat Gum because he has to figure out how to keep teaching the boys still in his charge without allowing the fact of Kurai's death to weigh him down over much. Yeah, it was interesting figuring out like how each of the mentors was gonna react. Like originally, I thought about having Fat Gum be the more emotional one.
Mm-hmm.
But I decided against that because he still needs to put up a good example for Tamaki because he's there in front of him.
Yeah.
Whereas Gang Orc is by himself. He's in his own. He's with his own private thoughts.
And like honestly, as a teacher, it is like one of the most helpless feelings when something happens to one of your students.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had it happen a few times over the years, and it's almost as bad. It's not as bad as being a parent and having something happen to your kids, because that's a whole nother level of heart-wrenching. But being a teacher and having, even though, and it's like people don't think of the teachers often because you think of family and friends and the kids who are close to them, but it's amazing, and I've watched how waves of grief can affect faculty. Just as much as students, because grief is grief is grief. It's heavy for everybody, even if it's more of a third degree connection.
And I'm not a teacher, and I don't even know that I consciously pulled from any of the things that you've talked to me about, like whenever a student has a hard time with something, but
or is passed or whatever.
But this just based on what I knew of the characters and what I know of people who have been in teacher positions, it seemed like the right route to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. So the Hero Public Safety Commission is already coming under public fire. This should make things more interesting going forward, even if when Kurai's resurrection is made public. I do hope we get to see Ingenium and Mina's brother spitting fire at those pricks in a public forum, if not open court, at some point down the line. I know it wouldn't be very action-centered arc if it did happen, but I'm curious to see how you would handle a legal battle as opposed to another round of fisticuffs.
Just shift to Suits. Suddenly we're reading Suits and not. Suits, but with quirks.
Some of my readers play the what's the Professor Layton or something like this. Or the Phoenix game. I don't know what it's called. There's some kind of lawyer game that they like playing. I can't remember what it's called. Ace Attorney. Ace Attorney.
Oh, okay. It's
like,
a game?
It's a game.
Like a strategy game or what?
I think so. It's like
That
based
sounds
on
like
your
something they'd be
decision,
into.
like based
That's
on your
that's
decisions,
cool.
like in the evidence you present, like for different cases. I think is how it works. I've never
Huh.
played the game. I've never played the game myself, but Silver and the others are always referencing it.
Interesting.
So yeah, um, so yeah, I'd have to.
Fun
I have to
little
brush up
crossover there.
Yeah, I'll have to brush up a little bit before I do any chapters in a public court. Let's see. This review is starting to stretch a little, so I'll condense things a little more. Your teasing of Aries' character and her identity were expertly handled in this arc. I truly did not think of her as a possibility, but the moment her identity was made clear, everything fit perfectly in the narrative sense. You gave us plenty of hints, but lumped them in with other tidbits that served to throw us off the trail at every turn. I saw a few of the others' theories while I was reading, and I personally subscribe to the idea that she must be Kurai and Mina's daughter from the future. But I think I'm going to like this development a great deal more when all is said and done. Yay. Yeah, like I don't know. I've done that kind of arc before, and I didn't feel like doing it. I didn't feel like doing it again.
Mm-hmm.
And just like as the story goes forward, I hope you guys will see like why I chose Aerie.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, I feel like you've written this before, so I'd be, if they're thinking you're doing it again, I would be hesitant.
that was another part of the mislead was like I have written something similar to this before.
Yeah.
So I just kind of wanted people to assume like, oh, he's going to do this again, and then we move on from there. Let's see. That and the thought of Mina being pregnant while Kurai is dead was honestly way more depressing of a thought than I might have been able to handle.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Man, bullet dodged in more than one way. Yeah, that would have been pretty bad. Let's see. Now I'll finish by saying that there is something about this story that keeps it unique from any others that I have read among all of the fan fictions. That is that I have not seen any other story where Deku got one for all, then permanently gave it up to someone else. Perhaps those exist and I just haven't found them, but I am unshakably confident in the idea that yours is the only story where Deku continues on his journey to become a hero with a quirk that he is neither born with nor gifted after he gives up one for all. I suppose you could have this future version of Aerie rewind Kai and Deku both so that they switch quirks back, but something tells me that won't be happening in this narrative. Also, love Kurai's handling of his return to life. If it had been all puppies and rainbows whenever he came back, I would have opted out because that would have been invalidated all the emotional build-up to that point. Yeah, definitely. I'm
definitely on the same page with you there.
100%. Let's see. This path leaves that emotional damage on all of these characters instead of just tossing a sensu bean at it. Sensu bean! And then moving on to the next plot point. I'm thinking
Sorry.
I'm fine.
Throwing goldfish at him by accident.
Better than a Rubik's Cube. I'm thinking that Bakugo is moving in the major character development direction, but who knows? Maybe Kurai's return will undo that? I just can't tell yet, but I look forward to finding out as the story continues to progress. So in conclusion, no matter what the others may say of this choice, I know that you have at least one reader who accepts it as it is and looks forward to the next arc with no doubts as to your narrative capabilities. I really needed to hear that, man.
Yeah, it's been a rough week, buddy.
It's been a very rough
Thank
week.
you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate that. Let's see. If this sounds like brown nosing, oh well. I'm not apologizing for speaking my mind on the subject, even if I'm the only one who thinks as such. Happy writing until the next one, and as always, be well in all things. P.S. Are we getting a look at an Akarui in the future? Gimme, let the unbridled savagery begin!
Bro, you don't even know.
You
don't even know.
You really don't even know.
But you know what? You're about to, so
Yep.
have fun.
So, have fun. We'll be back in a little bit.
Oh, crap. I dropped a goldfish again.
Ruh-roh.
I hear the rain start to fall as it turns to a pour. We're here again in this storm, but we've been here before. I see the street signs warning, telling me that I have no other place I could go. Feel like I'm stuck in motion, can't find balance. I'm living in a vertigo. Everything is nothing like before. I've tried to hold it together, clinging on to memories I swore that
future past. All right, Hikari, we're all here. Aizawa said in his usual flat tone as he stood in front of the entrance to Class 1A's dorm building. Now's the time for some answers. Gathered inside the building with him were Class 1A, Principal Nezu, All Might, and the teenage girl calling herself Eri, who had been roused with some cold water before being brought along. During the course of her fight, a rewind had accidentally removed the colored contact lenses she had been using to hide her naturally red eyes, having wanted to minimize the chances that anyone, hero or villain, would realize she had some connection to the little girl that Deku and Kai had rescued. She had also tried to wash out all the hair dye she had been using, but it turned out the brand she had gotten her hands on was rather difficult to remove without special treatment, so her tresses up to her roots remained black as night. Kurai had requested this gathering as soon as he had been seen by his homeroom teacher, and thanks to Nezu being told by Izuku that it had something to do with One for All, only those whom the Guardian Hero had permitted to be there were in attendance, even if they weren't completely sure of what was going on. Having been prompted by the man, Kurai stepped up to be beside the teacher, his eyes still black and lifeless as they had been since his awakening. His bearing and deathly appearance were unsettling enough that in spite of their joy at seeing him return to life, most of his classmates had been unable to work up the courage to approach him, nor had he tried to reach out to any of them. Only Mina and Izuku had come in close proximity to him, and even then, only his girlfriend had actually touched him. In fact, she had pretty much been attached to him until now, when he apparently decided that he needed to stand on his own to speak properly. Understand that I've only got a few pieces to this puzzle, he began, but I'll start with the most important one, the secret to my powers. Hold on, young Hikari. All Might began, but Kurai shot him a withering glare that surprised the man enough he couldn't finish his thought. The power and its secrets are mine to do with as I choose now, he said flatly. You had a circle of people whom you trusted to know about when the time was yours, and these are the people I've chosen. I trust each of them implicitly, and that's all there is to it. He kept up his piercing gaze at the former hero until Toshinari Yagi realized that there really was nothing that he or any of the others could do to stop Kurai. One for All was in his hands now, for better or worse. Once his teacher had subsided, Kurai turned back to his classmates, who now appeared even more unsettled by his appearance. You all know that I transferred Energon to Izuku before I died. What you don't know is how. He started again. The truth is that when we made our last stand against the villain on Nabu, Izuku transferred his quirk to me first. This is what allowed us to break free and put the villain down, in spite of the fact that I was on my last legs. His powers combined with mine into a single force proved to be too much for even somebody like All for One's copycat to handle. Though the same could be said of me. Only after the battle was over and Izuku had used up all of his remaining strength was I able to combine the capabilities of the two quirks in order to transfer my original powers to him. It didn't seem right to me that someone willing to give up his abilities in order to save everyone should be unable to pursue his dream of being a hero. You're talking about quirk transference like you've known about it being possible since before All for One fought All Might in Kamino, Kirishima said after the resurrected hero paused for breath. Don't tell me your power is like All for One's too? Not exactly, but like Energon, it originally came from that man, Kurai answered. Even more than that, it has deeper ties to his quirk than I would have thought possible. The truth is that while I am the first person to wield Energon as it is, Izuku is not the first holder of this power. One for All. One for All, Yayorozu repeated as the others who did not know the full story began to exchange confused looks. It's a power that goes back generations, back to when All for One himself was a young man, Kurai elaborated. It works like this. One person improves the power with their own physical abilities and quirk before handing it off to a successor. It grows more potent with each transfer, meaning that as the 10th holder, I have the potential to become even more powerful than Izuku would have with its strength. You're the 10th? Ida asked him, his eyes narrowing with a thoughtful suspicion. If Midoriya was the 9th to use it, then there's only one person who could be the 8th wielder of such a power. As he spoke, he turned to look at All Might, prompting everyone else to turn and look at the skinny man who suddenly looked very uncomfortable. Sir? Is it true? Yes, the older man sighed, wiping at his mouth as a bit of red spilled between his teeth. I found young Midoriya and made him my successor. The truth is that 6 years ago I was too wounded in a battle with All for One to keep being a pro for much longer, so I had to find someone who could carry on the torch after I was done.
So that explains all the similarities between you two, or that
Asui croaked.
I'm surprised more of us didn't figure it out before now.
It's been one of the best-kept secrets for well over 100 years until now, All Might said as he gave Hikari a disapproving look. The boy shrugged and said, I'm not about to keep lying to them after all that they've been through. They've more than earned the truth after everything. The world knows about All for One and what he can do now anyway. That doesn't explain this one-for-all deal, though. Yang said as she crossed her arms with a frown. What exactly is your quirk? It was originally 2 quirks, kind of like how Energon used to be 3 separate abilities, Kurai answered. The thing about this one is that it originated from All for One's younger brother, a man who was his polar opposite, right down to their ideals and their quirks. All for One had a brother? Kirishima yelped. His parents didn't think one monster was bad enough? Kaminari added. All of you quiet, Aizawa snapped, his eyes flaring red, which got everyone to shut up. To Kurai, he said, continue if you would. Thank you, sir. Kurai acknowledged briefly. Yes, he had a brother. Initially, everyone thought that he was quirkless. At some point, All for One gave his brother a quirk that would allow him to stockpile and harness massive amounts of physical force. We're not exactly sure why he did this, but if I had to take a guess, I'd say All for One was trying to get him to submit to his will. Either way, turned out that the younger brother did have a power, one that would have been useless under pretty much any other circumstance. He could transfer his own quirk to someone else. The 2 powers merged together and became what we now know as One for All, Izuku added, moving to stand by his friend, who gave him a grim nod as he recognized the show of support. For a long time, we assumed that the only thing to pass from person to person was the combined physical abilities of each prior holder. But when we went up against Class B in the mock battles, we learned that wasn't the case. Izuku accidentally manifested the powers of One for All's 5th user, a quirk called Black Whip. Kurai explained to the captive audience. We've been led to believe that 5 other quirks exist within One for All, but given that All Might never used them, or even knew that they could be used, there's no telling whether or not I'd be able to use them were I so inclined. 5 other powers, Jiro interrupted now. Your math seems a little off, Hikari. Shouldn't that be 7 other powers plus yours? Not everyone who had One for All was born with a quirk, Mina said, surprising the others, though they supposed it would make sense that she would know about all this. And Kurai doesn't have Energon anymore because he passed it on to Izuku. I used One for All to enhance my Giving Heart ability to the point where I was able to transfer the entirety of Energon into Izuku, instead of a set portion of power, Kurai explained. During the fight with 9, at least a few of you would have seen what happened when it enhanced Energon. It can do that to any quirk it's combined with. That's why each holder has to be careful about who they give it to. In the wrong hands, it could be an even bigger menace than All for One. I wouldn't worry about that too much, Eri murmured from where she was standing next to Aizawa, who had told her not to try anything. There's a reason why the quirk can't be stolen. Even if someone were to be tricked into giving the power to someone with evil intentions, I doubt they would be able to hold on to it for very long. You know this how exactly? Class A's homeroom teacher asked pointedly. In spite of Kurai's insistence that she was Eri and in no way a danger to the people in UA, the man was understandably wary of anyone who could bowl through half their staff and students like ninepins. Yeah, you're what, the 11th holder? Kurai guessed as he shifted his gaze to focus on the girl who had brought him back to life. Yes, she nodded. Where I come from, I am the 11th user of this power, though there have been others who tried to claim it before it came to me. Where you come from? All Might coughed again. Something tells me even I'm going to have a hard time wrapping my head around this one. I imagine you come from the future, right? Kurai asked her, to which she nodded. The future? Ruby yelped. Time travel quirks have always been theorized to exist, but I didn't think they actually did. When one eliminates the impossible, the only thing remaining is the truth, Tokoyami murmured. The question to be asked now is how such a thing is possible. Hikari claims that this girl is Eri, yet the Eri we know cannot manipulate time or inanimate objects. So does she hail from some alternate world, or is there more to it than we can currently see? I come from a future that no longer exists, Eri answered them calmly. I've already changed events enough to know that things will not play out the same they did in my time. How have you done that? Izuku asked. How did you come to have One for All, and how are you here in the first place? I think it's best if I start with the biggest thing that I've changed since coming here, and the disaster that would have followed, Eri told them. After I explain that, my circumstances will begin to make more sense. You will also benefit from insight into a new threat that moves against you even now. A new threat? Nezu asked, concern written into his fuzzy face. Yes, but from an old enemy. Eri informed them grimly. Her eyes flicked back and forth between Izuku and Kurai before they settled on the latter, and she started to speak again. It begins with Kai, she murmured. His death and the loss of One for All changes everything. 10 years from then. The world was in chaos now more than it had ever been before. Not since dark times when the quirks first manifested had such fear and uncertainty laid upon the globe. This was the reality that heroes had been fighting against in a losing battle for a decade now. Only a handful of the resistance cells still held out against the Global Paranormal Liberation Front, but in the last 2 years, their numbers had grown so small they could no longer maintain contact with one another, even within the same country on occasion. Of all the pockets of resistance in Asia, only one held out as a constant victor in their encounters against their old enemies. The UA Hero Alliance, led by Katsuki Bakugo, relentlessly struck blow after blow against the villains, always causing the most trouble for the organization that had forced nearly every government in the world to bend to their will. They were fast, powerful, and their resolve was unmatched in all the world. Not every one of their members had attended UA back when the heroics were taught as a career, but the group that had initially compromised their student body, so the name had stuck. When they first started, the group had been led by the hero Ingenium, who had surprised many of his older peers by stepping up to take charge in what could only be called the worst of times. Following an attack on their school that left nearly all the faculty members dead, he had taken those he could into hiding before re-emerging with an intent to fight back against the villains who had begun to seize power in a series of coups d'etat that was aiming to destabilize the Japanese government. Along with him were most of the other students from the hero course, including the Big Three, and in the first few weeks of their activity, they caused the newly joined villain forces quite the number of headaches. And then disaster struck, and the young heroes were left with a sudden and violent loss of their new leader at the hands of Tomura Shigaraki, who had acquired All for One's powers. Nearly a third of the students, Charge Bolt, Can't Stop Twinkling, Creati, Tentacle, Froppy, and Tailman, among them, that went against him that day had their quirks stolen before they were killed, which only added to Shigaraki's renown and capabilities. For a time following that incident, the UA Hero Alliance went underground and were unheard of by anyone. When they re-emerged, it was with the hero Deku at its head, who claimed that he would fight in the name of his fallen friends. His closest advisor was the hero Lemillion, who coordinated their efforts from wherever their base happened to be at the time. He also doubled as Ares' guardian during this time, as Aizawa had managed to get her out of danger and into the Big Three's protection before rushing back into the battle, where he would meet his demise under the initial strike from the Paranormal Liberation Front. Under their guidance, the UA Hero Alliance continued to make life difficult for their enemies, and they hardly lost a friend in the 6 years that they fought together. Then, the unthinkable occurred. Heroes began to openly defect to the side of the front, having accepted their rule as the new status quo, and growing tired of being on the losing side of things. Early on in this set of events, UA was betrayed into an ambush that led to the death of Deku, and Shigaraki's acquisition of Energon, a quirk that made him nearly invincible when combined with the other powers he had acquired over the years. His friends tried to retaliate, but when the battle was over, only a handful of their original number remained alive. Acid Queen, Myrtanaster, Freezerburn, Tsukuyomi, a restored Lemillion, Rule, Welder, and Battlefist were the only heroes left to back up Ground Zero, but he made sure that they put their remaining strength to good use. He saw to it that Eri began to train using her quirk while they were in hiding, as he recognized that her powers would be invaluable for saving their lives in a pinch, and it would do for the girl to be able to defend herself if someone came to try and exploit her, like the Hasaikai had done when she was little. Formal hero education was nothing but a memory by that time, but Lemillion still proved to be an effective and encouraging teacher for the girl. He even went so far as to say that she would eventually save everyone as Lemillion, the heroine who would undo a million tragedies. This became the new norm for about 4 years, when Akurui, who Mary had managed to rewind back to health a couple of months after the war broke out, made an unsettling discovery. According to his cyber sleuthing, there was a reason that Shigaraki had started to recruit heroes several years beforehand, other than just increasing the number of his soldiers. He barged in on a meeting between Bakugo, Togata, and Eri, the former of them glaring angrily at his ally. "What do you want, say a brat?" he growled. He had stuck Akurui with the nickname shortly after the death of his brother, but the truth was that the younger Hikari knew it meant that Bakugo had acknowledged him as a comrade of equivalent value to Kurai. These days, the last of the Guardian Hero's family bore enough scars across his body to rival his brother in the last months of his life. Many of them had been earned through the course of his months at torture at the hands of Shigaraki's most trusted lieutenants, following a surprise raid that led to his capture. Their brutal ministrations had served to leave his face littered with horribly twisted scars and a right eye that barely worked anymore. He managed to get around this particular handicap by wearing a scouter modeled after Kurai's support item that filtered and enhanced reflected light in a way that his damaged retina could still process and comprehend in order to present a clear image to his mind. Even though Eri had offered to undo the damage once he had been rescued, he had elected to keep the injury, claiming that it kept him motivated. "I figured out why Shigaraki stopped hunting all the heroes and started trying to recruit them," Akurui now answered as he shut the door behind himself. "Kurai has been dead for 10 years, but One for All still exists." "Huh?" Bakugo gaped. "One for what?" Togata asked, looking as puzzled as Eri felt. I'll explain the full details later, but Midoriya's quirk was capable of passing from person to person. Akudori said quickly. Right before his death, Kurai was the final wielder of the quirk. He was able to use it to give Midoriya his own powers so that they would be able to continue his dream of being a hero. Oh, so that's why his powers changed all of a sudden after that fight on Nabu. Togata nodded. I remember Midoriya saying something about trying to give me his powers after I lost mine, too. Now that all makes more sense. What does that have to do with the power now? Bakugo demanded. I thought it disappeared when Hikari went 6 feet under. Apparently not, Akudori muttered as he pulled a flash drive from his pocket and plugged it into the computer built into the table. A hologram flashed to life depicting Aokigahara, where a single red blip indicated the presence of a villain fortress. This is it. I've been trying to figure out for ages where Shigaraki keeps the quirks he doesn't want to use for himself, but hasn't made a Nomu to handle them yet. This is where he's keeping One for All. And how do we know this is good intel? Bakugo snorted. Have I ever steered you wrong before? Why wouldn't that quirk-stealing bastard want to use All Might's power? Bakugo muttered. When Eri and Togata's eyes widened, he growled out, Oh really, you didn't figure that out as soon as we told you that Deku wasn't born with his power? Come on! That's the thing. I don't think he can use it, Akudori said with a grin. We might still have a chance to beat Shigaraki and cut the head off the snake. Explain, Seiya Brat. After I broke into one of their research archives, I found a lot of files dedicated to people whom they've tried giving One for All to. Akudori began. Shigaraki used some combination of All for One and a quirk that affects deceased tissue to extract One for All from the remnants of my brother's corpse after he realized he could do it with Endeavor. And that's how he got that fire quirk that nearly roasted me last time. Bakugo scowled. Fantastic. He still had a harsh burn scar on his left arm from that incident. Shigaraki had been trying to destroy the flesh on his palms so that he wouldn't be able to produce his nitro sweat, but Bakugo had managed to avoid that outcome, though just barely. Eri had offered to rewind the affected tissue, but since it didn't cause him any pain or affect his quirk, Bakugo had also elected to keep the scar. Though, unlike the resident tech expert, he refused to explain why. Exactly. Akudori agreed with a more grim expression. Still, One for All isn't like most quirks. You can't take it by force no matter who you are. We never really knew why, until now. He clicked a button on the side of the table, and a voice recording began to play. The speaker was a man known only as Doctor to the heroes, but whoever he was, it was clear he held no small amount of influence within the villain's ranks. Test subject number 238 was also unable to retain the power of One for All, in spite of the fact that she believed herself to be a person of honor and integrity. She is also not the first to hear voices in her head when the quirk is transferred to her, but I can now document a definitive pattern, that only those who believe themselves to be righteous people are the ones who can hear them. This is, however, the first time the voices have been clear enough for someone to recall what they were saying. It seems there is indeed a collective conscience that resides within One for All that can determine the worthiness of its next potential host. Based on what the late subject 238 said, I personally believe this to be some sort of afterimage or echo of the spirits who possessed One for All in the past. A development of nearly equal interest. Shigaraki actually agrees with me on this matter, so we will continue to experiment in order to determine if there really is no way to make use of One for All. I shall begin by working to remove the secondary quirks that were recorded to have begun manifesting themselves in Izuku Midoriya before his passing of the quirk unto the deceased guardian hero, though it is certain to cost a great deal of time and effort, as we cannot use All for One to disentangle the combined powers in this scenario. If this endeavor fails, I fear this is one experiment that is doomed to yield no success. Nevertheless, I am nothing if not persistent. With that, the recording stopped, and Akudori stepped back with a triumphant smile on his face. How do you like that? He asked the others. Even dead, my brother and Midoriya are fighting back. That's amazing, Togata said with a huge smile. So, if we could take this quirk and give it to one of our friends, we might actually be able to turn all this around? The quirk is that strong? It's what enabled All Might to beat All for One all those years ago. Bakugo nodded, his brow still etched with a frown. The day that Deku and Hogosha teamed up against Nine. I've never seen anything like it, and I was there when All Might and All for One had their rematch. The only thing is... His frown deepened and the others worried at it. What is it, Ground Zero? Eri asked him. It sounds like they've reached a point where they're tricking idiots into thinking they're the good guys, so for all intents and purposes, the new candidates could end up being an actual hero with One for All's help, he muttered as he stared at the map of the Silent Forest. But the quirk still won't take him. I remember All Might saying that he spent a long time looking for a successor before he decided to give it to Deku. He said the power can only be passed on if the current user decides to hand it off. Well, what does that have to do with anything? Togata asked, still trying to wrap his head around the thought of One for All to begin with. Well, Hikari's not exactly around to tell us who he would have given it to, is he? Bakugo snapped. The quirk may not accept anybody for all we know, but if we're gonna try to give it to somebody, our best chances of getting this to work is trying to give it to a person he would have picked to succeed him. Oh, Togata said awkwardly, reluctant to point out the fact that they all knew. Pretty much everyone who he would have chosen to entrust the power to was already long dead. Well, if we do pull this off, who do you think would be our best bet, Hikari? Akudori thought for a few moments before he answered. I can think of 3 potential candidates. First is Mina, for obvious reasons. I wish I could put Tenya on this list, but second would have to be Todoroki. He doesn't know about One for All, but I get the feeling that Kurai would have told him about it if he'd lived long enough. Third is you, Togata. Me? The blonde hero asked in surprise. What makes you think that? He and I weren't super close. No, but he held a lot of respect for you, especially after you kept fighting against Chisaki following the loss of your powers, Akudori explained. I also listened to some of his private memoirs that he left behind for me, and in some of them, he mentioned that before Midoriya came into the picture, you were actually the primary candidate to receive One for All from All Might. Given all that, I doubt the quirk would reject you, but of course I can't be sure. Huh, Togata mused. Man, I can't imagine having that kind of power, not to mention the weight that must have come with it. Hikari and Midoriya were actually more amazing than I gave him credit for, and I already thought they were pretty awesome. All right, enough with the warm fuzzies, Bakugo growled. We've got an attack to plan. Say a brat. I wasn't able to find out much about the fortress itself, just that it's a Nomu factory and there are around 30 villains manning it at any given time, all of them with 2 quirks. Akudori explained. If the alarms go off, I'd bet my last yen on all of them setting all the Nomu loose on us too. Also, it's miles away from any cities, so we can't just ditch our gear and blend in with a crowd like we usually do with hit-and-run tactics. I don't want to hit and ditch, Bakugo growled as he slammed his fist into his palm to produce a small explosion. We're going to burn this factory to the ground. Actually, that's a smarter idea, Akudori mused as he put his chin in his hand. If we just stole the capsule with the quirk, they'd know what we were up to, and they'd hunt us down with greater prejudice and fear than if we just torch it to cover our tracks. That's going to make them less angry? Togata asked with a nervous chuckle. If they think, even if just for a little while, that we found a random base and blew it up, they won't be worried about us trying to use One for All ourselves, Akudori pointed out. As soon as they realize our true objective, though, they're going to come at us with everything they've got, and they won't stop until we're all dead and they have what they want again. I don't care about that, Bakugo said with a nasty smile as he peered at the marker that indicated the villain's base. It's been too damn long since I got to blast something into dust, and if this kills a bunch of Nomu, that's just a win-win for me. An extraction op like this is going to take all of our core members to pull off, Togata told Akudori, who was already deep in thought with probabilities and contingency plans swirling around in his mind. Even then, we might not have enough manpower to do it. We'll have enough, Akudori assured him as he met the other man's eyes. I'm going with you this time. Like hell, Bakugo snapped, drawing their attention back to him. The last time you went into action with us, you lost the ability to pull your own weight. I saved your lives, Akudori pointed out with a frown. Also, not a kid anymore. You're not a hero either. Heroes these days are outlaws, Kurai's brother snapped. Besides, don't go talking like you're any more of the real deal than me. You were never fully licensed before the war broke out. There's also the fact that without my strategies and inventions, all of you would be dead at least 100 times over. If I say I need to go to make a mission succeed, then I'm going. Oh yeah, and what are you going to do while we're trashing the place? Bakugo snorted. You going to lecture the high end until they get bored and leave? I was thinking more along the lines of infecting their computers' cloud systems with a virus that'll screw with the gene splicing process for when they turn corpses into Nomu. Akudori's own face lit up with a slightly nasty grin as he said this. The front's definitely going to hate me after this one. So prep it and give it to one of the others to make the drop, Bakugo told him. I don't have people to spare watching your scrawny ass. Yeah, you will if you follow my strategy, Akudori replied as he maintained his smirk. Face it, Bakugo, there's not a lot you can do to stop me if I want to go. I could knock your teeth in. Then good luck with the booby traps that you know are gonna be in there. Akudori shrugged. I couldn't pull the schematics before I would have been found out by the security systems, but I'll know how to counteract them on sight. That sounds convenient. Indeed, but it is also what happened. Now are you ready to stop arguing in circles, or are you gonna let me help you blow up the factory? You're only getting 1 guard, got it? 2, Akudori said with a shake of his head. Don't worry, I won't take any of your favorites. I've already contacted a friend of ours from the Shiketsu cell who wants to lend us a hand. Also, he turned his gaze on Eri, whose chin firmed up as she realized where he was about to go. I think it's about time she gets her chance to take on the people who took away her home. I'm in, Eri said before either of the men could object. Looking up at them, she said, I'm older now than you were when you first started fighting villains, Ground Zero. Lemillion has been training me for years, and I'm ready to start being a hero like all of you, like Kai and Deku were. Togata looked concerned, but Bakugo simply chuckled and said, "You sure grown up, Squirt. I've been waiting for you to say this for a while now." "You don't have a problem with her going, but you gave me crap?" Akadori complained. "She's been trained to fight. You're an IT guy," the explosive hero snorted. "Tell it to the guy whose arm I cut off on Island." "Eri, are you sure about this?" Togata asked his ward worriedly. "I probably won't be able to protect you if you come with us. I'd feel more comfortable if we started you off with a smaller mission, you know?" "We don't have that kind of time," the white-haired girl said with a swift shake of her head. "Trust that you taught me what I need to know, okay? I won't be alone either. Hikari will be with me, and he's the smartest person we know. He'll make sure that we're both okay." "I will do that," Akadori nodded. "You got my word, Togata. Eri will be okay once all is said and done. And me too, if anyone cares." "You'd better be," Bakugo warned him. "Your brother had a bad habit of promising not to die and then breaking his word. If you don't make it back with the rest of us, I'll kill you." "Yeah, I figured." "Well, Eri, if this is going to be your first mission, then there's something I got to show you," Togata said with a proud smile. After informing the other members of the UA Alliance about their next target, as well as the origins of One for All itself, the group started getting ready to head out. Everyone had various reactions to learning about the origins of Izuku and Kurai's power. But all of them had seen crazy enough things that it allowed them to accept this as the truth without much fuss. Mina seemed more energetic than usual, a rare sight these days. Following the death of Kurai, she had been devastated, and the subsequent deaths of her other friends had turned her into a permanently grim-faced figure who only seemed to really come alive when she was fighting villains. You're looking well, considering what we're about to head into," Weiss said as she strapped on her rapier. "For years, all we've done is stuff that just annoys them more than anything," Mina replied as she threw on her costume's winter coat. "But if we can take back One for All and use it against them like All Might did, we might actually be able to start winning instead of just surviving. And I don't know about you, but I'd like a change in the current win-lose ratio." "Honestly, I'll just be happy if we can all make it through this in one piece," Weiss replied. "The last time we went all in like this, it cost us." 10 months back, Akadori had been taken hostage by Dabi, who had intended to deliver him to Shigaraki so that his quirk could be made to serve their cause. The villain's plan had been foiled, but he managed to escape and he killed Tetsu, though not before the metallic hero had managed to take his right eye and ear. Apparently, Dabi had barely survived his wounds, and his face had been so damaged that the sensory organs destroyed by real steel couldn't be healed, even with the quirks at Shigaraki's disposal. There had been a lot less Pyrrhic victories under Bakugo's guidance than the others had expected, but of course, this was war. Not everyone could be saved, as unfortunate as it was. To that effect, Mina told her friend, "Of course I want everyone to come home safely too. If Akadori is taking the lead on this one, I have total faith we'll all come out of this as winners." "Didn't he sacrifice himself the last time he voluntarily took part in a battle?" Weiss pointed out. "That was 10 years ago," Mina shrugged. "I'm sure he knows what he's doing this time around. Besides, the stakes are higher now. He knows there's no room for screw-ups. He'd only come under these circumstances if he believed that it was the best option. We'll even have backup this time." "Yeah, one person, apparently," Kendo muttered, having overheard part of their conversation. "Anyone know who it is?" "Hey, guys!" A deep, cheerful voice called from the entrance. "Man, it's hard to find this place." "I think that's the point, Mr. Yorashi," added another familiar voice, though this one was fairly unexpected. "Come on, kid, how many times do I have to tell you to call me Inasa? I'd even settle for Gale Force at this point." "Yorashi? And Kota?" Mina asked of no one in particular. "How'd Akaruri get them to come along?" The teenage boy was dressed in a hero outfit that somewhat resembled swimming gear, save that it came with heavy gauntlets that reminded them of Bakugo's first costume design. "Something tells me the kid was a last-minute addition." Kendo sighed as she and the others began to approach the loud hero. In spite of her appearance, the girl was actually relieved to have Gale Force as their backup. They all were. His powers were only rivaled by that of Bakugo and Todoroki, so having him on their assault team would be a major asset. "Yorashi, how you been?" Akadori called out as he moved to shake hands with the tall man. "Not too bad, actually." The loud hero laughed as he returned the gesture. "Waterhose here just took out a whole patrol of villains on his own just the other day. I was so proud of him I decided he should come with us. He'll be a big help, I promise." "Stop embarrassing me," Kota begged in a deadpan tone. "We'll be glad to have all the help we can get," Shoto said as he moved to greet the other hero as an old friend. "It's good to see you again." "Same to you, Todoroki." "I didn't account for Kota coming along, but this will work out well," Akadori said as he looked the younger hero in training up and down. "Hey kid, I'm running this op. I know the basics of your quirk, but I need to know what kind of villains were you able to take out on your own, and how many." There were 8 of them, and 2 got jumped up on quirk enhancers. Kota replied quickly. All of them were mid to long range fighters, so I was able to use my quirk to counter their powers and then get in close for some hand to hand. Once they reach off balance or just stunned enough, I waterlogged them into submission. It only took him a couple minutes, too, Yorashi added. After we beat the front, this kid's gonna be rocking the top of the charts. He's got so much passion, it just gets me excited thinking about it. Please kill him or me, Kota complained as he placed a gloved hand over his face. He's exhausting. Anyone else feeling some Sun Eater vibes off this guy? Togata laughed as he approached and laid an arm across the younger hero's shoulders. You gotta have some more confidence around yourself around your friends, my man. Oh, great, now there's two of them. It was dawn the next morning when the fortress came into view for the hero team. Akudori had armed himself with a handful of his inventions, so even if he didn't have a battle-oriented quirk, he could still hold his own, even against villains like the ones guarding the fortress. He would also be taking both Eri and Kota along with him for his part of the mission, as he was likely to be the least combative on the op. The plan was simple enough. While most of the heroes would be busy distracting the guards and Nomu with property damage and other manners of violence, the three youngest members of the group would be sneaking into the vault to get what they came for, as well as plant explosives to ensure that at least part of the building went down. The heavy hitters, Bakugo, Todoroki, Yoarashi, Togata, and Tokoyami, would each be taking on a separate wing of the fortress in an effort to spread their enemies' defenses as thinly as possible. Mina, Weiss, Kendo, Kurai, and Awase would each trail behind one of the other heroes in order to take out any stragglers, as well as damage the structure itself, so that it would eventually collapse under its own weight. Each team's quota is 6 villains, plus however many Nomu get in your way. Akudori reminded them as he used a device on his wrist to double-check that all of his systems were working properly. Get in, get out, meet back at Deku Base. There was a brief pause before he added, You all have your disguise kits on you, right? It had become standard for their teams to carry cosmetic-altering packets with them in order to change their appearances right after a raid. Each one contained hair dyes, colored contact lenses, scissors, makeup, anything that a hero would need to alter their given appearance as to present an image entirely different from the images that went along with their wanted posters. We know our jobs, Saobrat, Bakugo growled once everyone had finished double-checking their gear. Just make sure you blast this place to hell and get out yourself. I don't want to have to come back here and save your ass again. Sure thing. The younger man grinned as he clenched his fist, after which an armored gauntlet appeared over his hand. Whoa, what's that? Mina asked him. My newest invention, courtesy of Schnee Industries, he snickered. Nanotech. Next time a villain tries to take me hostage, I'll have a nasty surprise waiting for them. I'm glad to see that some of my family's resources are being put to good use, Weiss muttered thinly. Toward the end of the first year in the war that swept the globe, her family's company had stunned everyone by lending its support to the villains. When Weiss had confronted her father about it, he stated that it was always best for business to lend support to the winning side, and that just wasn't the heroes anymore. Weiss and her sister, Winter, refused to join their father and brother in support of the villains, and now the elder Schnee led one of the most active resistance cells in the States, their main focus being on the destruction of their father's bigger assets. Weiss had considered going home to join her, but after the loss of Ida and many others, she decided to stay and help her friends in their fight. Besides, there were several of her holdings of her father's that she had been able to damage throughout her stay in the Orient, so she was able to fulfill both goals simultaneously. Each time they had hit one of Schnee Industries' facilities, Akudori had requested they turn over any technological prototypes that they had gotten a hold of to him. Now they knew why. As he retracted the gauntlet into what looked like a wristwatch, Akudori stood up and said, All right, people. Graveyard shift is going to be over in 30 minutes, so be in position in 20. I see AA defenses, so try to stay below their line of sight, especially those of you who like using your height to your advantage. There are at least 10 enhanced villains on patrol in the trees and outside the building itself. Bakugo, you get first strike. Damn right I do. He started walking off toward the southern end of the fortress, Weiss following close behind. Make sure you all go plus ultra extras. This got the others to laugh a little bit before they also began to break into their teams. Tokoyami and Mina head for the west, followed by Togata and Kodai heading east. Todoroki, Yoarashi, Awase, and Kendo would be taking the front gate, since it was the most heavily fortified, though they would separate into two teams once they were inside. Once they had trashed the initial defenses, Akudori would move in with the kids to head for the archives where quirks were being stored for later use. Turning to the younger heroes now, Akudori asked them, You guys ready? Yeah. Kota nodded as he clenched his fists. I'm ready to do some real damage to these guys after what they did to Deku and Firecracker. As long as you use that motivation to get the mission done, I look forward to seeing what you can do, the young genius said approvingly. How about you, Eri? I'm ready, she nodded. I'm going to be a hero that your brother would be proud of. She was dressed in what would apparently be her hero costume, a blue battle skirt that reminded Akudori of the azure color that his brother used to wear, green sleeves that matched Izuku's verdant hair, and surprisingly, Togata's very own cape from when he had saved Eri from the Hasaikai. He had a newer one that Akaruri had made for him a couple of years ago, but he kept a hold of the one that he had used to protect the little girl, and now it was hers to carry. Akaruri smiled at Eri and ruffled her hair the way he remembered Kurai would do with him before saying, "Then let's see what you've got, Lemillion."
In the shadows I've grown, in my struggles I've shown, I'll never back down for anyone. You think that this is the end, I've just begun. Through my life I've been gentle, but I know it's in my mental. Stop, need a moment, a component. I try to show it, so soft spoken. Am I broken? No. Who's my next opponent? Every moment pushes me to focus harder, show I can do anything I set my mind to. No obstacle I can't push through.
All right, so I know you've been looking forward to this chapter for a while.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Like when you first started doing the future arc, I was like, no, don't get my feelings involved. I've already been played with. But I love future Akarui. I can't get enough, and I hope others love him too.
Yeah.
Clearly he's been rewound. So,
More than one, more than
once.
once. Yeah, because
To
otherwise the
maintain-
tumor would have gotten him by this
Maintain his
point.
health.
Yeah. So like he's at this point. So when Ari's talking about the future stuff, he would be like he's in his early 20s,
Okay.
but he would still have the body of a late teenager because if
Interesting.
he grows anymore, the tumor will once again render him unable to do what he needs to do.
Got it.
So yeah, there's but yeah, so we opened up with Kurai talking about One for All, and I like honestly I don't know how I feel about that scene where he basically tells All Might to shove it, because like you can tell like there's still some like lingering animosity there,
Yeah.
like even from before he died and was brought back, because like it's kind of one of those things where it's like you think you've forgiven somebody, but then something happens and you're like, maybe I didn't.
Yeah, that was a gut punch right there. That was like, and anytime someone attacks All Might, especially with the most, I don't want to give any spoilers, but with the most recent My Hero episodes, I get the gut punch and I get like this visceral reaction.
Poor
Because I'm
All
like,
Might.
no, do not hurt our good boy. Stop. He can't help it that he doesn't think sometimes, okay?
Yeah.
He's wonderful.
Yeah.
So
But like
Poor
but
All Might.
also there's also that moment of like where All Might's like he's like there's really
Yeah.
nothing he could like
He's just the wind.
he had influence over Deku, like whether you want to call it that or something else, because Deku like idolized
Yeah,
him like
absolutely.
most of his life. Kurai, he's like he respected All Might. He always knew he was a good hero. Any hero should be aspired to be like him.
he's also,
But he doesn't have like that like respect like etched into every fiber of his being.
like Deku. Yeah.
Yeah.
That being said, it's like he's just beyond caring what anyone thinks at this point, and he's just like, okay, here it is.
Yep.
Clearly, I have to do this now.
At the
so-
same time, though, he has this bit where he's like, you had your chance to do with the quirk as you wanted. You had people you trusted. This is who I choose.
Yeah. And it sucks because you see the air just coming out of All Might, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
you've worked so hard to like be taking care of this secret and carrying this burden, and all of a sudden he's just kind of throwing it in your face, but not in a mean way intentionally.
He's just kind of like, this is what needs to happen.
Yeah,
he's like,
in
people know
order
about
to
all.
move forward.
He's like, people know about All for One. They're gonna ask questions about why our quirks switched. And he's like, I don't want to lie to these people.
Yeah. At this
like-
point he's just gonna have to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of gets laid out. Aizawa's just
So we have Class A finding out about One for All fairly earlier on than
Yeah,
the original story.
Absolutely. And I remember being really shocked when you did this. I was like, what is happening?
Honestly, like, if I could have figured out a way narratively to keep the secret, I would have done it. But at this point, it's just like there's too many questions to be asked that they can't keep dodging they can't keep dodging giving the answers.
He's just gotta lay it out for
Yeah,
him.
and he's like
Aerie just kind of put them in this impossible situation.
Yeah,
so
it's
like,
like,
and if we're
he's
gonna,
got one for all, she's got one for all, you've got one for all.
and if we're gonna keep her from going to Tartaros and being interrogated, we're just gonna
Gonna have to have
go
some
for it.
answers.
Yeah.
Gonna have to have some answers going. Yeah, but I did enjoy writing that, like, even though like he's almost like like his attitude is almost alien to what it normally is, like even then Deku and Mina are like still standing with him and like helping him to explain stuff. Because like they can tell he's like just bordering on being antagonistic, and they're kind of like it's cool to like see them like stepping up to kind of smooth things over a little bit and like pick up the, because like there's bits where he's like pausing, like trying to figure out like how am I going to say what's next, and then Mina or Deku would step up and they would kind of like, because they're like kind of the bridge between him and everybody else right now.
Yeah.
Because like his body like it says at the beginning of the chapter, like his body language and just bearing is so different to what they're used to. Like like everybody's like, oh cool, he's alive, but then they see him and they're like they just kind of instinctively shrink away from him.
Yeah.
Because he's just completely unapproachable. Like even at the beginning of the story, like he was kind of he was a little shyer, but he never like he hardly even he hardly even looks like himself almost. Like you can see he's there, but just it's so off.
Yeah. And in order to prevent like rumors and all that entails, we need to just kind of lay it out in the open here.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, to prevent further speculations, basically. Again, if I could have kept the secret without like coming up with some bullcrap reasoning that just nobody in their right minds would accept, and just make it work because that's how I want the story to go, what would be the point of that? So I went with this. And then so we get through the explanations, and then Aerie takes her turn, is like, okay, you guys know what the situation is, let me tell you what the situation was going to be if I didn't do this.
And I mean, me being a millennial and growing up on the Terminator, I love me some post-apocalyptic vibes. So,
I've never seen the Terminator.
dude, we need to fix that.
I think I've
Just
seen
the
like
first one. You need to see the first one.
I've seen like the last 20 minutes of the second one, I think.
Okay, you need to see the first one at the very least. Like the sequels are meh, but
Yeah.
it is phenomenal and cheesy, and I love it.
Well, it's when was it made? Like in the
80s.
80s? Okay, yeah. Well then, yeah, it's gonna have some mozzarella in there. What was I gonna say? So, what did you like? I think I told you that I was gonna be doing a future arc, but like, did I like explain what?
Sorry, I'm like.
Did I forget? Like, did I explain to you what I was gonna be doing with this like before I actually started writing it, or did I just tell you there's gonna be a future arc?
I knew that it was a doomed arc, which is why I was like gritting my teeth and not wanting to get emotionally involved, because I knew that it was not going to go well.
Which is why I had to make Akururi the main narrator.
Yeah, because otherwise I would have checked out, and I would have totally checked out. So I needed Akururi to be his very best self, and it did not. I was excited.
I don't know when I came up with the Bakugo nickname Sayabrat, but it works. It made sense.
It works, and I like his dynamic with Bakugo, and just like the back and forth, which is pretty nice. I love future Bakugo. He's a little war torn. He's not quite. I mean, he's still feisty as always, but he doesn't
fly off the handle for everything.
He's seen some stuff, so he's mellowed out a little.
Well, also
bit.
he's like, he knows like he's only got so many people left at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's seen so many of his friends die. Like Kirishima, Kaminari, they're both dead at this point.
Oh, my heart.
Yeah. I can't remember. I think Kirishima was like one of the first to go too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Why are you making me suffer so? Anyway,
Sorry.
So yeah, you kind of gave a little brief history of like how everything just kind of went from bad to worse. Then a lot of you were like, this story doesn't work with One for All.
I didn't disagree with you. This is what happens if One for All wasn't in the
Yeah.
picture.
Yeah, and so
You weren't wrong.
But now it's like we have this new status quo. And the big, they were starting to make some progress, but heroes are starting to defect. And I mean, I can almost see their reasoning, because it's like, well, what are we doing but causing more damage and dragging this war out when we could just go back to protecting civilians and just doing what we're supposed to do, or policing or whatever, what have you, right?
The lesser of two
Just
evils kind of thing.
keeping peace rather than continuing this insane civil war, right?
Which is, I'm sure, how a lot of the Nazis started out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it also gives me some very like, what was it?
Is it a show or an actual event?
Mandalorian, like that one Mandalorian episode in
yeah.
the new season with the Doctor.
Yeah.
It definitely, it's like, well, which side is worse? It's just a bunch of bureaucracies. Well, we have the jokes of all of the wealthy, high class. Oh, Republic.
Thanks for it's like, good on you for joining the right side.
And he's like, oh, but no, he's more like, I just can't keep track. Empire, Republic, does it really make a difference? And it's a wealthy aristocrat making a shallow comment, but it carries a lot of weight.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's like there's corruption of power. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? And so that's the whole direction Star Wars has taken. And I mean, and it's a truth about society and culture. And like, even when, whether the good guys are winning, the bad guys are winning, there's going to be issues, and people can rationalize themselves into anything, right? And just kind of delude yourself more like into believing that, well, I'm fighting a losing battle. Why don't I just cut my losses and do something that'll make me feel like I'm accomplishing something, right? Yeah. And I'm sure, like,
there
sure
could have
they're
been
not
any number of reasons for it. I'm just like, if honestly, I'm like, if things kept going that way, like, especially with the latest season, like, that further reinforced the idea that, like, if things were to go a certain way, a lot of the heroes would have just turned around as soon as it served their interests.
And then we have Akurui, who's, he's been captured, escaped, but he's still working behind the scenes, being the guy in the chair, and he's ready to move out of that. He's found some good intel.
Well, he's found something that he feels is worth risking his neck directly for.
Yeah, because this is big. They've gone a few years without any real
wins. Like they've done some small victories and stuff, but it's like they're just trying to recoup their losses more than anything.
Yeah.
They have, like, the last time they thought they might get a real win, Deku died basically. Yeah, and like I thought about doing a chapter dedicated to like how Deku went down with some of the others, but I decided
we literally just had a big hero death. We can't.
There was that, and also it's just one of those things where I feel like it's better left to the imagination, like how he went down. Like, we know he went down swinging, but I think I prefer to leave that to people's individual imaginations, like how it actually, like what were his last moments like, kind of thing. So you liked it that I brought in Gale Force and Kota, right?
Oh yeah, I got really excited when Kota came in.
Yeah.
And like I totally see.
I was like, Eri can't be the only kid hero in this thing.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
This, the young blood coming in, and he's just so done with everyone. He's a total teenager. But he's there for it. He's still Kota.
Yeah.
But
a lot of people like have done fan art of him like growing up and like going to UA. But I'm like, I'm like, just guessing what I know off his personality, I feel like he would want to be like Deku, but he would have to pretend or prove that he can be like Deku, but do it his way.
Yeah.
And he'd go to Shiketsu for that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I could totally see that. Because he's not the kind of kid who externally idolizes someone like Deku.
Yeah, he got the red shoes thing, and he thought he was being sneaky, but everybody's like, oh, you got those because of Deku. Shut up.
Yeah, so it's like he's the undercover nerd, right? He totally loves him,
and he idolizes him, but he's got to keep up his image, man. Like we all know that.
I think
we
my
all know
favorite bit
person.
was that scene where Lemillion and Gale Force are in the room.
Yes.
I'm just that was one of those things where as I was writing it, I was just like, oh no, there's so much positivity
I'm
that's
getting
going to
some
be in this.
Amajiki vibes, you?
Yeah. It's like, oh no, there's two of them.
I know, he's like, and obviously he's not Amajiki,
Yeah.
but he's not like that personality in the slightest. But we have the little emo moper over here who's too cool for the adults and doesn't want to. I was
just like Gale Force and Lemillion in the same room. Like that's just too much positivity for anybody, much less this guy.
A little painful, and I love it.
Yeah. I wish I'd had time to do a sketch of future Kota, but maybe at some point I can get that. I can get that going. Yeah. He's. Yeah, I wish I had more time to go into I wish I had more time to go into his backstory, what led him up to this point.
Yeah.
But it's I can only afford so many side quests, especially after this last arc that's been going on.
We don't want to totally derail everyone's interest.
It's it's a flashback within a flash forward. What time period are we in? What time period are we in again?
Yeah, we're not going to do that. I know. Well, it's wild for me to see you writing time travel in general because I've always known you as someone who hates time travel so much, and it stresses you.
It depends on how it's done.
Yeah, you get this visceral reaction anytime I mention. I'll read a book that involves time travel and I'll be like, "Oh my gosh, you'd love it," and blah blah blah, and I'll tell him about it, and you'll just get I can see you shuddering, and it's hilarious. So just seeing how you handle it is interesting to me because I know you've always hated it. So
yeah, it's again, I'm trying to push myself outside of my comfort zone kind of thing. But yeah, we got I hope people like you like the armor design, right?
Oh yeah,
for Akurai.
I was impressed. I don't know, I like sorry, I'm having to look at it right now and think about what I'm gonna. I like how you have him almost transparent, but no, the armor design is really cool. Got almost this dragon fist happening over here.
The idea was almost like Black Panther.
Yeah.
Black Panther was an inspiration, but I wanted to do, in honor of his brother who loved Dragon Ball Z.
Yes,
gotta get some draconian armor going. I thought about doing the dragon helmet, but then I was just like.
No.
Nah, I don't got patience for that.
And also, Akurui is not one for theatrics. He
has the helmet. It comes on. I just didn't want to draw it, honestly.
Also, I just don't think he's one for theatrics. If it wants to have I don't know. I'd rather see his face too. Come on.
Yeah. Nah, that. Getting the eye. The messed up eye to work was real interesting.
I like it.
But I'm glad that I got it to turn out the way that I did. But yeah, this is gonna be Aries' first. I feel like I'm about to come under fire again for this, but I know people are gonna get on my case. How did Aries beat everybody up when this is her first actual mission going on? I'm just okay, you know what, she's been trained by Lemillion and Bakugo in hand to hand.
And it's been a while.
And she's been doing this for years now. Even if she hasn't gone out on any missions, she can throw down with any number of people, and she doesn't even need her quirk to do it.
She just has 20. She's just had 20 big brothers and sisters who are no, stay home, stay safe, protect the child, right? And she's done being protected.
Yep.
But she's been training with the best. I had forgotten this was her first mission.
This is the first official mission.
But I feel like she's been doing stuff on the side too.
Yeah.
I really doubt this is because in the world they live in, it'd be almost impossible for her to avoid anything.
Yeah, she's been in fights. She's been in fights, but she's never gone into one on purpose.
Okay.
There have been times when their hideout got discovered and they had to run for it. She had to knock some heads.
I'm sure she shadowed with them on any number of little recon ops.
This will be talked about more later on, but sometimes she would be there for extract ops because she knows there's going to be injuries and she's their reset button basically.
Yeah. So it's so what you're saying is she hasn't been on any really big operations, but she's been
this is the
working
first
behind the scenes plenty of
times.
She
Akurui, Akurui basically he knows he's not he knows he tells off Bakugo, he's you can call me not a real hero, but you weren't either, but Akurui doesn't have the same physical training that all of these guys do. He could certainly hold his own, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
She has been training to fight.
It's the difference between like Sherlock and Captain America.
So, yeah.
They're both scary in their own way.
So like this is the first time where she's going to be going and she's in charge of guarding Akurui, and she's not going to have any of the more experienced people to fall back on if something happens. It's her and Kota that are going to be going, and like they're both very talented.
Yeah.
Yeah, the little newbies, and like Akurui is kind of the mentor figure that comes along with this, but like his combat capabilities are somewhat limited. Which that kind of I thought for that dynamic it kind of helps round it out a little bit, but we'll get to see more of that in the next chapter, which I'm very excited for.
Yes. Yeah. So we have history planning and rising action, and looks like we'll have to wait till the next chapter to really see what goes down.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to the next chapter.
I enjoyed it for sure. I got a little teary-eyed, I think. If I'm remembering correctly, which I'm not sure.
I think you are. We can talk about it off the camera then.
All right.
Well, thanks guys, everybody. Thank you all for leaving your honest reviews. Like, I know a lot of you didn't like what I did, but as I said before, I'm not going to apologize for making the decision that I did. I do think that this is the best way for the story to move forward. I do hope that you will continue to return, and I do hope that you will once again enjoy the story going forward from here. Like I mentioned before, Becca was in the same boat as you guys. These are the chapters that kind of helped turn it around for her. So I hope it does the same thing for you guys. But all said, thank you very much for being our readers and our audience for so long. And we do hope to see you for the next one. Have a plus ultra couple of weeks until then.